Hey, Terry, what'd you mess with last time with the volume for the microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you guys are.
All right, just testing. Ed, let me know if you can hear us. Ed Cunningham, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Okay. Shyok, since you're going to be voting, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're live. Okay, do I need to use this thing? Do I need to use this or can I use my own? Can you guys hear me now? Thumbs up. Oh, they did. They heard me. They could hear me. Yeah, I can pass the mic. You got cooties coming?
Making some, it's coming through. It's just not really loud.
All right.
Hold on, one more thing. Let me just see if there's a ball.
Thank you all for your patience and indulgence. We apologize. This worked seamlessly last time.
Excellent.
Can you hear me now, Terry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better, Terry. That's coming through better.
Do it again.
Hey, Terry, can you hear me now?
Okay, for volume, turn down.
That'll do it.
I will do it. All
And
right.
turn it down.
Okay, so I don't have to use that.
No.
I have a big enough mouth anyway. Everybody hears me. I want to welcome everyone to the city of Sharonville. To start off our evening, we have a public hearing that I would like to call to order. It's regarding the approval of the Sharonville 2030 Comprehensive Plan. And who do we have from the city going to speak to that? John Creech, are you speaking? John? He's on the phone.
John is having some issues, but all he was going to do, I believe, is introduce Wendy to give a presentation. And Wendy should be available via Zoom.
Okay. Is she an attendee then? Okay, I got her. I'm going to move her over to a panelist. All right, Wendy, it's all you. There you are. Wendy, can you hear us? You can go ahead and start your presentation.
I can hear you. The host has disabled my participant screen sharing.
I didn't. I moved you over to be a host. Hang on. Because you were in my chat room. You weren't in as a panelist to speak, to show anything. Josh, can you help us with her sharing her screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, you're a co-host now.
All right. All right. Well, hello, everyone. It's nice to see everybody, even a little bit remotely. As a reminder, my name is Wendy Moeller. I'm with Compass Point Planning, one of the firms hired to help facilitate the process to develop the Sharonville 2030 Comprehensive Plan. I worked with McGill Smith Punchin from Sharonville as well, who helped out on this plan. So tonight I wanted to give you kind of an overview of the plan, walk you through some of the sections, and then we'll be available to answer any questions you have. So I want to start out with a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is. This is really a document that's supposed to set out the vision, long-term, what are we thinking about as far as the physical development of Sharonville, based a lot on the input from the community, and many of you participated in some of those events over the last year and a half now. Although we did use some of our, understanding of communities and best practices to inject in that to see how we could frame that up to best make this a community-driven plan. I want to try to kind of reiterate, this is really a very policy level plan. It is used to help make decisions as you move forward in decisions and things like zoning, capital investments, and even like the funding of projects. The adoption of the plan does not guarantee that any of these recommendations in here will actually take place, with the exception of we are already working on the update of the zoning code. That was part of the contract I signed. But any next steps for actual implementation of these strategies will require additional authorization by the council. So for example, we do talk about some changes to the land uses, looking at more light industrial and employment heavy jobs areas. This plan doesn't change the zoning. So that change would require, the same zoning amendment process that goes through planning and the city council. Any future planning efforts would require, that requires additional study would also, require authorization by the council. For example, a lot of the talk in this planning effort was about, the possibility of a railroad overpass. Well, that's clearly a long-term process. It's going to require planning and a lot of funding. And every step of the way, the city council is going to have to step in and authorize the movement forward. The same with any kind of construction of sidewalks, signage. There's a lot of things that we talk about with regards to investment, and that would require additional authorization that would happen outside of the process we're starting tonight. I kind of talked about already that it's not zoning. It's also separate from some of the other planning efforts that have been going on or that have been completed in the past. This will replace your 1984, 1985 comprehensive plan, but it does not supersede or replace things like the Downtown Loop Streetscape Plan, which was recently adopted, or the Northern Lights District Master Plan, or the Downtown Master Plan. All of those still have they get into a lot more detail than this comprehensive plan is, and they will still remain active and valid. Having a comprehensive plan, and part of the reason that this got started and was very important was having a comprehensive plan in Ohio not only helps you with zoning and gives you more defensible zoning, it actually increases your opportunities for grants and other funding sources from organizations like OKI and ODOT. If you have a up-to-date comprehensive plan, you're more likely to move up the ranks of funding opportunities. And we share this in the plan. This is in the plan, but OKI has provided a lot of funding for the community in recent years. And so we look to their efforts as to how to show them what we have here in front of us tonight is a comprehensive plan. So OKI has two kind of regional planning documents that are important to look at. The one on the right are the elements of their OKI elements of an effective local comprehensive plan. And on the that was on the left, on the right are their strategic regional policy plan. And in the middle are the various elements of this plan. So what we're trying to show here is how this really reflects everything they look for when comprehensive planning. So the hope is that if in the future the city wants to try to find some grants or funding opportunities, that they can showcase this as the comprehensive plan. So I talked a little bit earlier about public input being very important to this. We began in January, well, actually technically in December at the Christmas walk when we were really promoting the start of this planning process. But the first big public meeting, several of the pictures you see in front of you are from that, was in January 2019. We've used a series of public meetings. We've used some social events like Beers, Bites, and Big Ideas with the Chamber of Commerce. We had a steering committee, several members of whom I believe are going to be, here tonight or here virtually. We did some online surveys, and then we also still have Sharonville2030.com, which is the project website where you can see the plan, you can see summaries of the different engagement. And all of this was helped, we used all of this information to really help drive the creation of this plan, the planning themes and the vision, as well as the actions and strategies that we'll talk about tonight. If this may be hard to see, this is just a very, big summary of all the different points in the process where we involve the public, starting in January all the way until the beginning of this year, and then into the adoption process. This map is actually in the back of the plan, but this map was one of the first maps we generated. which was based on the January public meeting. What you see in red are areas of change or areas where there's a desire to see some improvement. So it's not necessarily that it's a bad place, but it's just where you would like to see a lot of effort. So we have downtown and some of the connectors. We have the Northern Lebanon or State Route 42, where people would like to see a lot more, aesthetic improvements and gateway entrances. The areas that you see in green, or the areas you see with the green arrows, are all areas that the community values, whether it be parks or whether it be connections and the ability to get across the community. So we use that as just the initial starting point to essentially ask, what do you love about Sharonville? Where are some things that you would like to see improvements? And that helps kind of start the process. Using that and some of the other earlier involvement activities, we came up with 5 major planning themes. And these aren't in, I know we number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they're actually not in any order priority. We just wanted to try and put together some kind of vision of where were the main themes we heard people talking about. And so we came up with pursuing responsible community development, capitalizing on the economic momentum, improving connectivity, enhancing community amenities, and redefining the vision for our places. And I'm going to talk about each of these later, but these really kind of capitalize on the things we kept hearing over and over about this. I also want to share, in theme 5, we talk about 4 different areas of the city. When we started this process, when the city contracted with my team to write this, part of that project was to develop kind of a focus area plan for the Sharon Road Gateway and the Lebanon Road corridor. But one of the things we kept hearing more and more about as we went through is the downtown Sharonville loop. Everybody really loves that part of the town. And while there is a downtown master plan, we felt it was important to kind of take into account everything we were hearing that we could build on that master plan. So we ended up adding that as kind of another place that we needed to establish a vision. The Northern Lights District also has a master plan. And what we did here is, in order to just make sure that this plan was really citywide, we went and incorporated many of the recommendations that were in that plan and kind of summarized them in this comprehensive plan. Again, it doesn't replace those master plans, but it just seeks to make this kind of the citywide vision document. So the first theme we have is pursuing responsible community development, which is really comes down to land use. What you have in front of you is the future land use plan. Many of the areas of the city are what they are. We call them terminal land uses, if you want to put it that way. So a lot of your neighborhoods are going to continue to be neighborhoods. We have a breakdown of the different parks. Those parks are going to be parks for long term. But we also looked at things like what type of industrial areas and what kind of commerce. And so we looked at things like, do we have this darker pink area be more of the focusing to try to get more employment heavy industries or businesses in there, such as research and development. I want to point out kind of 2 specific areas that are kind of the transitional areas in this community. You'll see a number of yellow stars where we have some very small residential neighborhoods that are kind of surrounded by parks or commercial areas. These are the residential transitional areas. And what we're saying here is that these areas are neighborhoods. They should continue to be neighborhoods. But there may come a time in the future when somebody consolidates the properties or has a large redevelopment plan for the entire area. And in those cases, another land use, maybe perhaps the ones that are surrounding, would be more appropriate. So some of the areas just here across the street from City Hall are residential and should continue to be, but perhaps someday that could be redeveloped as kind of an extension of downtown. So that's what the yellow stars mean. And then in the far right at Francis Rec Acres, you have the red kind of star. And that's because there's not been a defined final plan for that. And while I understand that there's difficulties in saying that can be anything but a park because of all the deed restrictions and such, there's still perhaps could be a long-term possibility that could be something other than a park. And because of that, we felt it was important to say, what could that be? And what we think that might be in the long term might be some gateway commerce, kind of an extension of what's out there now. But again, that would only be if the opportunity became available and realistic. The other thing I wanted to share for each of these were some like a sampling of. I'm not going to walk through every single implementation strategy for each of these themes, but I'm happy to answer questions about any of them. But just to give you an idea of what we were thinking of actions that would help implement this plan under the pursuing responsible community development, we have pursuing flood mitigation efforts within the downtown loop, establishing a priority listing of flood and stormwater projects, updating the zoning ordinance, which is again already underway, and evaluating options for rental housing inspections or a more robust property maintenance review later on. The next theme is capitalizing on our economic development. Obviously, in the city, economic development is a big thing. This map just shows some data we found about almost 27,000 people, and this is from 2017, almost 27,000 workers come into the city every day. 550 workers stay, or residents of the city, and stay here, and over almost 5,500 residents who are, employed work outside of the city. So it shows you how much of an economic engine the city is. And so these are where we have a lot of action strategies. So one of them is empowering the Community Improvement Corporation to function as a land bank. Developing an informational pamphlet on local amenities to distribute to businesses and visitors. This is an idea that came out of one of the representatives of the hotels in the Northern Lights District. They kept showing or telling people to, that wanted to take a run where all the parks were in Glendale, because they didn't have something to easily show people where can they go in Sharonville. So that's just a way of like kind of an easy low-hanging fruit to promote Sharonville as the city. Continue to work regularly with the local businesses to ensure they have the support they need, and developing more programming or events to attract people to Sharonville, as well as just provide activities for the people of Sharonville. Improving connectivity. This is where we show a lot of information. So in improving connectivity is what it sounds like, looking at how we move across the community and move out and in from the region. And this covers a lot of things from sidewalk improvements, trail improvements, roadway improvements, and even identifies the railroad overpasses and railroad crossings as kind of areas of future study. This is one of the hottest topics of discussion during the public meetings. There were a lot of people who wanted to talk about how to get to Sharon Road or Sharon Woods from Kemper or Cornell. Lots of people talking about how do we get from the Northern Lights District to the downtown loop. So we incorporated this element of the plan. And just as a reminder, this map in particular, and the connectivity plan as well, shows a range of projects. So these highlight projects that are already, that were in play before this plan even started and will continue regardless of this plan. It talks about connectivity activities that maybe have funding and are in the preliminary planning efforts already. And it has ones that are kind of long-term future. We would like to do this, but it's not underway right now. Again, a sampling of the strategies related to this is establishing those pedestrian connections from Sharon Woods along Cornell and Kemper, creating a shared use path from Princeton High School in the Northern Lights District to the downtown loop, creating a plan for improving pedestrian safety along US 42. We talked about it being very difficult to get from the downtown loop to north of 275 safely because there's no sidewalks. And then working with OKI to study the feasibility for the construction of a railroad overpass or some kind of railroad stoppage relief on Sharon Road. Enhancing community amenities. Everybody talks about how they really enjoy the community rec center. They love the parks and the access to the parks and all these amenities the community has. People talk a lot about the schools, but one of the things we point out in the plan is the schools have their own planning process, and that's an element where it's important for the city to be a partner, but this plan's not going to outline school system planning. So some of the implementation strategies here are developing a premier community gathering space with a major focal point at the end of Creek Road within the loop. continuing beautification efforts along the city's major roadways and the major gateways, developing an enhanced wayfinding system throughout the city, and incorporating public art where it might be feasible as part of any streetscape or capital improvement projects. Again, attracting people and giving more community amenities into the city of Sharonville. And finally, the final theme was the redefine a vision for our places. And again, this is building off the focus areas we talked about before. And so there's almost essentially a map and summary for each of those 4 areas. And you can see here is the downtown loop. We look at long-term things like consolidating the parking behind and like reorganizing the parking to make it more efficient in behind all the buildings, which actually might, depending on how you do it, might open up more development opportunities along the street. Looking at the potential for, street diets or roadway diets, looking at potential for, just traffic flow improvement. The one thing I will note is that at the beginning of the planning process was when the city was evaluating the one-way versus a two-way. And we felt it was important that this plan state what ultimately the city was moving forward with is to continue the current configuration. This is the Sharon Road Gateway. And the biggest thing here beyond like enhancing the connections from Northern Lights District to the Sharon Loop is looking at the railway stoppage there and how we can deal with that, as well as just enhancing some of the gateway entrances. The State Route 42 Lebanon corridor, we talked a little bit about that. Some of that is related to connectivity and being able to get people up through the corridor. Also looking at enhancements of streetscapes and building development, and even something along the lines of realigning the entrance to Sharon Woods there so it lines up with the street light at Park 42. And then finally, the Northern Lights District. Again, this just kind of highlights the recommendations that came out of the master plan. We weren't reinventing the wheel here, and shows also the extension of the TIF district, or not extending the TIF district. It shows the whole TIF district. Some strategies, and I think I talked a little bit about that, is implementing the streetscape improvement plan that I believe is underway. Implementing a smart traffic system that connects traffic signaling to railroad blockages, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later. Working with Great Parks of Hamilton County to realign that entrance, and developing the stronger land use and design regulations for the downtown loop. The last section of the plan is the implementation. So we have the vision, what we want to try to do over the long term, but how do we, what do we actually have to do to get there? What are the actions? We did not want to try to create some laundry list of 300 things the city needs to do in the next 10, 20 years. What we tried to do is look at what are the most realistic, I think we've got about 50 of them there. Will all of them get done? Probably not. But this gives the city the ability to prioritize. It gives the city the ability to look at what resources they have available every year, and maybe something becomes more of a priority or something moves down the line. The other thing we did is we set a priority for each of these. And this slide shows you what the different categories of prioritization are. So we have the current projects, those things that are underway, like the zoning ordinance is currently underway. We have certain things that are continuous efforts. Those are things that aren't real projects per se. They are things that, like continuing to reach out to local businesses to make sure they have the support they need. That's something you don't really start or stop. It will be something that the city just continues to work on. Short-term critical are the three, we originally started with 2 or 3 and we ended up with 3. Of the highest, what do we really need to look at first and foremost to really feel like we're doing something? These are really important to us right now. Short-term, immediate are kind of the next 5 years of, it would be great if we can get it done. Those are the things we need to be working on next. Those are things that might shift up or down pretty easily. And then we have the longer term stuff. And some of these are things like the railroad overpasses. By 2030, it's not likely one of those will be constructed just because of the time it's going to take to do all the studies, but it might be able to do the studies and start getting the funding together. So those are the things we talk about in this implementation. And while I can bring up the entire plan and show you the entire list, I just wanted to kind of highlight, the top 3 here in particular. And this is my last slide, I promise. But the top three, the kind of short-term critical ones that the steering committee helped identify, was to create the Sharonville Land Bank. And that is with the Community Improvement Corporation to create that land bank. The acquisition of land is actually a lower down priority. So first, the critical thing is to set it up and set up the tool to do it. Then later on will be, especially now when resources might be tight, is to strategically look at where do we want to acquire property. Establishing a pedestrian connection to Sharon Woods along Cornell Road. Again, conceptual idea, there's no alignments, there's nothing in plans right now, but a lot of people talked about that. And so that became a short-term critical project. And then finally, implementing a smart traffic system that connects traffic signaling railroad stoppages. Knowing that, tomorrow is not going to be the start of construction of an overpass, what is something that the city could do quicker? And one of the things is to look at using smart technology. That might be having some signage that will trigger, some detours if there's going to be a known stoppage. It might be sending text out to people and saying there's a railway stoppage, maybe not clear within so many minutes. And, particularly people in Sharonville may know routes around it. So those are the three short-term critical ones. And then you can start to see how we get into the short-term intermediate. The purpose of this is to allow the city to evaluate this plan every year. I'm not saying, start from the beginning and do this whole process again, but every year, City Council and Planning Commission might have a chance to look at this and say, what did we accomplish? What can we celebrate that we finished? What do we, are these priorities right? Right now, every community I'm aware of is dealing with COVID and the impacts financially. Perhaps next year, one of the other priorities becomes far more important or more realistic to do in the short term, so those priorities can move up. This is just, again, the preliminary vision of what are some of the strategies, and then the city will continuously, to work through this all. So with that ends my presentation, and will be available when there's question time.
Does anyone have any questions regarding this? Elected or residents, your opportunity to speak on this. It is a public hearing. I don't see anyone, Wendy. Thank you there.
Thank you.
Okay, if no one has any thoughts on that. Okay, she may have, no, she's still there. If you can come up to the mic, please, and just give us your name, and you're welcome to ask the question.
It's Elaine Wolf, 3935 East Kemper Road. I'm not familiar with the track going from Sharonville up Cornell to Sharon Woods. What are you talking about? Is that some kind of a sidewalk? Is it a pathway? What do you guys have in?
I was not invited into these, so Wendy, can you talk to that, or Mayor?
Yes, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. So the connection into Sharon Woods from both Cornell and Kemper are very conceptual ideas, and it was not, we did not come up with a plan for what that should be. People were, when we were listening to the public input, a lot of people were complaining that there's no real easy access to Sharon Woods if you're just walking beyond going to the main entrances where the vehicle were. And part of that was where Sharon Wood wants people to enter. And so part of it is in the future trying to find out where you could create some kind of connection. If there's the ability to connect to a shared path trail, maybe it is a shared path. If it's a connection to the sidewalks, it might be a sidewalk. We, in the maps we provided, are very conceptual about it. So we're just trying to show that that was generally an area where that people wanted to see a connection, but that's not necessarily like some kind of alignment.
And what about the same for Kemper Road and to Sharon Woods? What do you have an idea for that?
It's both same situation. From Cornell and Kemper, they were both very conceptual.
Okay.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Michael Flaggy. I live at 3961 East Kemper Road. I just got one simple question. Are you familiar with the trail that is actually behind and runs parallel to Kemper Road? I think Zion Lane, where the barber shop is, Zion Lane goes back that way. And a lot of people access Kemper Road there. I was just curious if you were familiar with, at one point in time, it was an operating road. Okay, and then probably about 35 years ago, and I've lived on Kemper Road for close to 45. That was an open lane. It was a continuation of Buckeye Falls Lane. I really don't think it has it. I was just curious if you knew about that lane that's dedicated for bikers and pedestrians.
Actually, yeah, it was raised as part of that, as possibly one of the ideas for an alignment. However, you know, the point again for this comprehensive plan was just to establish that that was something of importance, and it would take more work with the Greater Parks of Ohio to make sure that that would be, you know, again, a good access point. But that was actually a suggestion that came up.
Okay, just was curious if you're aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and close this public meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Now I'm going to call to order our regular council meeting. If everyone will please stand, our mayor is going to lead us in a moment of prayer and then the Pledge of Allegiance.
I just invite you to join me in whatever way you wish to reach out with a moment of silence. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. You can all be seated now. Roll call, Mrs. Buhite.
Sure. Mr. Tankersley?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Lippert?
Here.
Mr. Duda?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Knight? Here. And Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from our July 21st regular council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, those stand as written and distributed. We're going to move on to reports and communication. Mayor Hardman.
So I believe to begin my meeting, where's Chief Vanover?
I see him
There he
amongst
is.
the blue back there.
I believe he's asked to address council, and I think he has some friends here with him.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come in tonight and just need a few minutes of my time. It's not really my time. I'd like to introduce Chief Tom Wells from the Springdale Police Department. He reached out and asked for some time at a council meeting to address you, and I'll let Chief Wells take it over.
Good evening, folks. If I could ask Chief Vanover to remain here at the podium with me, and if I could ask Lieutenant Pruce and Lieutenant Cordes to come up as well. Hardly know where to begin tonight. This presentation we're making this evening is about, you know, you hear about the brotherhood of police all the time, and it's hard to kind of quantify that and what it means other than something in the abstract. But what I wanted to just briefly do this evening is tell you about the real friendships and the real professionalism that exist in the profession of policing, and what a great police department you have here. And we're here to say thank you. On March 21st of 2020, our department experienced the worst thing that a police department can ever experience, which is the murder of a brother or sister officer. And in this case, one of our sisters, Kaya Grant, was murdered in the line of duty. And you can imagine, for me as a chief of 7 weeks at that time, you know, having to deal with something like that in that moment was something I can't even put into words what that felt like. But what I remember more than anything else about it was the amount of support that we received, not just from Sharonville, but from many different departments. And that support wasn't just phone calls to say, hey, I'm here for you if you need me. It was people that just showed up and did the right thing. And what I wanted to do is just take a couple moments to just tell you a couple of those things. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I think it's important to relate that. When I came back from the hospital that night after notifying Kaya's mother and father about what had happened to her, and went to the hospital and had spent a few moments with her there, and then, you know, she was taken out in full honors out to the ambulance. And I, of course, came back after that to the police department and had to make public notification about what happened. Mark Cruz, who's right here, friend of mine since college, we went to college together, was standing in our PD in full uniform, ready to go, whatever was needed. I didn't call him. I had tons of things you can imagine on my mind that I had to do. But just seeing Mark stand there in our police station, ready to do whatever was needed to be done, at that moment, I'll never forget what that felt like, just that reassurance that we were going to get through this. And that's what I mean about friendship. And then the next day, to have Chief Vanover, and then Lieutenant Nesbitt was with him that day, as well as Mark Pruce. And then eventually we're joined by Lieutenant Cordes and Amy Williams, essentially came over and they volunteered, Chief Vanover volunteered whatever we needed. And these fine employees of yours basically stepped up and said, plug me in wherever you need me. And we did. I had members of this department, members of Colerain Township that essentially became members of the Springdale Police, while our officers and our civilian staff were given time off to grieve in those next several days. And in fact, this department here at Sharonville and Colerain actually patrolled the city of Springdale until the following Wednesday. And we needed that. It's just, again, it's another thing you just can't put into words what that feels like when something like that happens. And so what I wanted to come here to do is thank you as a body, the mayor and this council, and saying thank you so much for the type of professionals that you hire here. And thank you personally for what it meant to me to have that kind of support and be able to have the support of the city of Sharonville. And that continues now through even with the COVID situation, with the working agreement that we have between our departments to make sure that your residents and our residents of Forest Park are safe. So with that, I want to say thank you. I'd like to make this presentation to Chief Vanover. What it says is, it says Police Officer Kaya Grant on top, and it has a picture of Kaya on here, and it says, to the men and women, both sworn and civilian of the Sharonville Police Department, we, the Springdale Police Department, wish to express our sincere gratitude for the support and strength you and your department showed us and Kaya during this tragic time of need. The debt that is owed can never be repaid. Thank you. I wanted to say too, I really appreciate the fact, Chief reached out to me, when we got some decals that we put on our cruisers that we will always have on our cruisers to remember Kaya. And Chief Vanover reached out and said, we're all one in this, and we would like to be able to do the same thing. And your cruisers display that same sticker that ours do. And we're honored that Sharonville Police does that. So thank you. That's awesome.
Great.
I don't have anything to say other than, we stepped up and did what I thought was the right thing to do. And we've always worked really well together. And I think the relationship between the Sharonville Police Department and the Springdale Police Department is stronger now than it's ever been. And partly because of the tragedy that we all had to go through. But this affected our officers a lot also. I mean, they worked with Kaya for, years. So tough situation. And I hope nobody ever has to go through it again. But that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Chief,
you,
Chief, thank you. And I will just simply say that Sharonville will always have Springdale's back, and I know that you guys will have ours. And it is certainly, it was pleasure is not the right word, but to be able to step in and help out in any way that we could. And hopefully, God willing, you or us will never, ever need to have another situation of this nature in any time in the future. But you certainly know you can count on us through the thick and the thin, and we know we can count on you as well. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you for presenting that. They are a fine group of leaders, and we've got a fine group of individuals that are with the Sharonville Police Department, and you guys do over there in Springdale as well. So thank you very much for coming with us.
Thank you very much.
Great job, gentlemen. As you undoubtedly know, we talked probably several months ago about desires to look at ways we could deal with the caboose that's on our Depot Square. Unfortunately, despite attempts to see if we could find individuals that would be interested in restoring that caboose, taking that caboose and doing something with it, we were unsuccessful, thus resulting in us finally realizing that the only option we had was to have it taken down. If you've been by tonight, at least when I was down past at 5 o'clock, there was one wall left. I don't know if there's enough anymore at this point. We did manage to put some stuff up on Facebook at the end of last week so that people would be aware of what was going on when they started seeing it. It obviously stirred up a lot of sentiment and a lot of sadness, and there's simply nothing wrong with sadness. I get it. It's a landmark, I think, that has been around for We did the research, so it's been around since 1977 here in the city of Sharonville. It was brought in, it was purchased for $500, and I don't know how much money has been spent and put into that, probably a lot more than that over the last 50 years. But ultimately, at this point, it simply was beyond maintaining, it was beyond fixing. It was both a liability and a safety concern for us as a city, and it was time to go. What I'm excited about, and what I hope everybody is excited about, is as you approved at the last council meeting, the streetscape program for the downtown. As we talk about big plans, comprehensive plans, and other things, this being one of them. You approved the streetscape plan for downtown, and part of that's going to be the reinvention of our square area, the infrastructure in our downtown. We need to focus some effort there, and it doesn't take much to drive down to see pavers tilted up, cracked out curbs all throughout the downtown. But we simply, as a city, need to focus effort on revitalizing that area in the same way that we have with Chester Road, and that's what hopefully you are all on board with doing. And what I will say to those folks who have sadness in their heart and certainly have some attachment to the caboose or the train history that we have in Sharonville, we certainly will take those things into consideration. I know you will take these things into consideration as we continue to look at what downtown Sharonville looks like in the ensuing years, as we look at the loop and how we can make that better for all of our residents and all of our businesses, so that we can continue to be the city where people live, work, and play that I think we all want to be. With that said, I do have, I've shared obviously several emails with you over the last couple of days regarding the Kemper Road project. I know that Mr. Schmidt has a presentation, I think, later. I think there's obviously some folks in the audience who have some comments on that. I expect that I'll probably have some comments based on that at that point later on. So I'll reserve those and hold those off for now. But that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me at this point.
Are there any questions currently for the mayor? Seeing none, we will move on to our Safety Service Director, Mr. Lucas. He's joining us via Zoom.
Thank you. Just legislation this evening. Ordinance 2020-25E is our annual high grass and weed assessment. These are all properties that Public Works had to cut, and we now forward these to the county to be placed on tax bills. We are asking that another ordinance 2020-26E, dealing with our Sharon Road Railroad Improvement Project, be added to the agenda this evening. Law Committee reviewed it prior to council and is making that recommendation as well. If Mark can speak to this ordinance, that would be appreciated.
I want to be heard without this on. Law Committee considered this at the last Law Committee meeting, and rather than putting it before council at that time, a decision was made for me to contact the attorney for the lone person that had not agreed to this yet. I did so, and there was a difference of opinion on the best way to approach this, whether it would be an appropriation or something else. And basically, this is a safety improvement for the railroad crossing on Sharon Road by Canal Road. But I got emails, as the latest one came in this morning, indicating that both the owner of the final parcel of property involved, she did not need to attend tonight, nor did her attorney. And he also said that they have absolutely no objection to this legislation. So as a result, it's now before council.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your effort.
And then one other piece of legislation this evening was the subject of the public hearing, Resolution 2020 R16. There is one difference, though. It's not a first and only reading. It's just a first reading this evening. And that's it.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lucas? Seeing none, we will move on to my report. And I had agreed at Law Committee to share my report with Mr. Schmidt. So Mr. Schmidt, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen when I get your pictures up, if you would like to go ahead and start speaking.
Okay, Paul Schmidt, 3590 Concerto. I'm your Ward 3 council member. Not really a presentation to the mayor. It's just more of a reflection and a sharing of what I learned by being about with the citizens, walking the various areas, various cities and villages to find out more information really about this shared path situation. I formerly was a site manager for a major chemical site, had several hundred people reporting to me, and I always had some talks. So it's been a long time since I talked with groups, so bear with me a little bit and be patient. I always had one talk a year was with myths, and I defined a myth that was really at our site. And a myth is a fictitious story or an unscientific account, a belief, and such things taken collectively. So I looked at what our condition is, and I had a couple findings on what I think myths might be with regard to this. The first and foremost and most important as far as the citizens goes is this bike path is a done deal, not a done deal. Second is, as a resident, you have no options, either accept our offer or we go to court under eminent domain, and you may not receive its condition of eminent domain. And that may or may not be the case because there are indeed other options. Another myth is that, well, there are only a few people who object to this and it's all about money. And that is absolutely not true. After I went around and listened, I followed a little bit of the prayer of St. Francis, seek to understand. I did a lot of listening. The mayor and I did attend a meeting with some residents, a cordial meeting, a little contentious at a few times, but not bad. But when I left the meeting, I went home, and I'm trained as a research chemist. I thought, this really doesn't, there's an awful lot of things that I'm not comfortable with. So I then went back and began to look at this. And I walked a lot around various cities around us, counties, cities, et cetera, and took pictures, did a lot of measurements. I was walking around with a tape measure, and no police caught me, and they asked what a strange man was doing out here with a tape measure. So I got away with it. But very important, you cannot understand this project unless you walk it. You can look at pictures, you can look at plaques. You never understand exactly what you're looking at until you walk from it. I did, then right before the mayor's meeting, this was chugging along for a long time, and I started to get calls from residents. That's when the mayor and I visited with them, and we wanted to listen to the citizens. Okay, now, these are the pictures that I put up, just some to give you a little bit of a story. This has been a very long project, as he mentioned, connectivity, but a sidewalk really will do the job very nicely. The bike path really, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, not necessary. People on the south side of Kemper will see people right behind them on that street that you mentioned, bikes, walking, etc., all the time. And it's very, very convenient, and a bike path per se is not needed. Safety from a standpoint is, if one looks at it from the standpoint of the park in Sharon Woods down to Shadow Hill, down to Woodwood. There's where the traffic is. That's the people walking up to the playground. And that was when I got calls for, people said, this is not a safety commitment, a safety, and it is. Now, here's some of this goes back a long way. Mr. Cook and I were on a planning commission some time ago. The planning commission started a long time ago in council wanting to put some type of sidewalks on Kemper Avenue. The very first effort on this was when the subdivision went in with those new houses on Julianne Drive. You notice that as Julianne makes a circle and comes around, there's a sidewalk in front. That was affectionately dubbed by the builder and the owner of the land as the sidewalk to nowhere, because it starts and stops. There's nothing there. And he objected. Now, they were putting up some $600,000-$700,000 homes, and he wanted to know why we had to have a sidewalk, which is part of his plot layout, if you will. And the answer was, Mr. Ledbetter gave to him, and I still remember it, we have to start somewhere, and this is it. So this is the first sidewalk that went in. And you can see it. It's on the south side looking down, generally 4-foot wide conventional sidewalk. All right? Now, as we walk around through Sharonville, the sidewalks that we've worked on, the one, let's see, the one straight dead center, that's Plainfield. Standard sidewalk, just finished, just completed. If you look over to bottom right, that's Fields Erdel. That would be a wonderful, wonderful objective. We have just finished that. Compliments everywhere for putting that in. Standard, see the sidewalk going all the way up, and I'm told by residents of Copperfield, it takes about 12 minutes for the kids to get down to get some ice cream. So it's nice and safe, good, well done. Now, on the center bottom is off of Kemper, after you go by the root beer stand, cross over Cincinnati, Dayton. That's a walk bike trail, I presume. I don't know how it got there, or I wasn't a part of when it was put in. That is 7.5 feet wide, and it is in a commercial area. Commercial area, 7.5 feet wide. And you can see me taking the picture at the bottom. You can see what it is. That is commercial. It goes all the way up as you walk up there through the other side, crossing over. Now, that is 7.5 feet wide in a commercial area. All the others are 4 feet. Up on the upper left is the walk path, bike path at Summit Park. That is right along Plainfield. That is 10 feet wide. There's a sign, you can't quite see it. It says motor vehicles prohibited, and it has a pole there to make sure motor vehicles don't ride on it, because essentially, if one thinks about it, the traffic lane on Kemper, one of the traffic lanes is 11.5 feet wide. The bike hike path is 10 feet wide, pretty much traffic lane, if you will. So that is along Summit Park. It stops at Daventry. It's always just on the outskirts, no houses involved. The upper right is Sharon Woods. Sharon Woods has, I think they call it their hike bike trail that goes around the lakes. And there, it's 10 feet wide. You never notice it because there are so many trees, lakes, everything right by you, and I've walked it many, many times. You don't notice that until you go in at the lodge, and there, that's a picture. You can see it's 10 feet wide. You can really see the width of it, and it does indeed display that full amount. So the history is we wanted a sidewalk, started with the sidewalk to nowhere, and now we've kind of evolved to this. When I started out, I thought, well, way back when the path first came up and was proposed and the grant was proposed, I was for this. I thought we need basically a sidewalk. I know so much about the bike part of it, and really we don't. And after I did all the study, talked with the people, walked around, was in Evendale, Blue Ash, Montgomery, all over, I'm really opposed to a bike hike, the so-called bike path, if you will. It's really not a path, and it really is not appropriate for a residential issue. There is no need for a bike path. One is really already present. Numerous options are available easily and very cost effectively, and can address all our safety concerns from Shadow Hill and Woods View to the park playground. We did some engineering reports, we've studied those, and I'm not interested in he did this or should have done this better or council should have done it. I'm just more interested in really fixing things, and there are some things that we really want to work on from that and from a communication standpoint. I also want to talk a little bit very briefly about contacts that have been made with our citizens. And the one that troubles me most is from Dunreuben, because I've been getting from many people, and that they were either told pretty much directly, very highly intimidated. The letter that they were provided with was very intimidating, and it almost bordered on some, what I consider really, I don't know what the right word would be for it, but it's far above intimidating. And these people were kind of told this was it. Again, you have the two choices. I want to speak just for a moment, because you're here. If you reached out to us, we have to reach out. We do have to respond to your reaching out to us. Sharonville is a statutory city. That means council really has a role, a very important role. Council approves budgets, spending, and legislation, as we're doing tonight again. For approval of anything, you need 4 out of 7 votes. The mayor can veto anything that council approves or disapproves, so to say. He can be overridden by a vote of 5 out of the 7 people. Any person in Sharonville, and any one of you, is represented by a majority on council, because there are 3 at-large councilmen, Mrs. Knight, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Lippert. These are the 3 at-large people, and you have the ward councilman. So at any one time, you have 4 people representing you. Now, most of you come to me. That's pretty common that they'll go to the ward person because they know him. They don't see the at-large very much. But they represent you, and they should be given all the information, needs that you want, in addition to talking with me. All right? If you can control, and I always tell them, alternate proposals. Okay, this is another question that came up a number of people as I went about and talked. What happens if we come up with some alternate proposal for a sidewalk or maybe something different? Anything that is proposed must be financially approved by these 7 people, 5 out of 7. So if we're going to modify this to this, oh, okay, well, that's a nice thought. It has to be paid for. To be paid for, it has to come from council. It has to come from these 4 out of 7 people. All right, everybody, because a lot of people don't understand that you really do have a majority on council on any issue that you would choose, but you have to, and they're easy to get a hold of. All right, now I'm going to do a little bit of philosophical. Love to give quotes at employee meetings. Einstein, at least a quote has been given to him. Einstein quote was, "A smart man knows the right things to say. A wise man knows whether to say them or not." Tonight, I'm going to play both cards. All right, and I'm not going to go into this. That doesn't get us anywhere. I'm more interested in how we're going to progress. All right? And my prayer again is to represent the citizens well. We've walked through the pictures. We've walked from the sidewalk to nowhere. We've walked from the sidewalk to nowhere was 3 feet. The bike path on Cincinnati-Dayton Road, and I'm measuring all these, going north, that little in between is 3 feet. Coming back, it's 4 feet, expands to 6 feet. If you so want to measure the south part. The great Sharon Woods, 10 feet. If you look at Fields Erdel and Plainfields, that Fields Erdel is the ultimate what we would like. I mean, I would like, I don't know how the citizens like it, but that is an ultimate situation. We can read some quotes from our Dunrobin, which kind of troubled me, and I'll just put them out here, that I guess I'm a little concerned about the city of Sharonville needs your property for a highway project, identified, et cetera, as a Kemper bike path. And we need to acquire the following from you. And it goes on to proceed to describe your property. Go to the next page, and down at the bottom it said, the mayor has discretion to veto this project, and if he does, it will not proceed. Well, to a certain degree, I'm not exactly certain what the mayor would veto. It has to come from this council. It has to be really approved by this council in terms of the spending, and then more importantly, in terms of its eminent domain, which was added to this. You know, it said, if we're able to discuss this offer with you, if you reject the offer or we're unable to come to an agreement, we may have to exercise our eminent domain authority to appropriate your property. This will require a court procedure and a court proceeding. You may disagree with whether or not this reflects a fair market value, et cetera. But most importantly, it says, if you do not accept this offer and cannot come to an agreement on the acquisition, Sharonville has the right to file suit to acquire your land by eminent domain in the county in which the property is located. This action, referred to an appropriation proceeding, ensures your right to be fully protected while at the same time allowing construction of the highway project to proceed. I don't know how you rebuild a tree after you cut it down. That's kind of a pretty good trick if you can do it. And this always assumes that the only issue is money. And after talking to so many people on Kemper, money is not the big issue. Money is, well, you want to be treated fairly, but that's not the point. Kemper Road has many residents who've lived there for a long time. There are people who really, you say, well, they come down here, and they are very somewhat elderly people. They don't have tremendous mobility. They don't have tremendous flexibility to get out and do things. And you know your neighbors, you know what they are. And that's a very kind of a troubling statement when you look at those things. That it's kind of assumed that everyone does that. All right. Now, a little bit, I wrote a quote from Dunrobin. All right, now I'm going to save you a lot of time walking around and riding around. because I spent hours doing this. So councilman, get ready for a little show and tell, and we'll see what we can do. Mr. Cook, now Mr. Cook and I were on planning commission before. We got on our house. But, we could talk. Sure. All right. This is, as I said, you absolutely cannot understand the project until you walk the area, get up on the lawn, see where it's going, see what's going to happen. All right, let's get down here.
Okay. You might travel with us so everyone can hear what's going on. Thank you. It's on.
Yeah, Mr. Cook, if you take the end there.
Okay, this one?
Yes, that would do. All right, now, that'll get us started. All right. This is 10 feet. 10 feet. That is not a path. I was going to read to you the definition of a path. A track worn or a way worn by footsteps. A walker way for the use of people on foot is in a park or garden. All right, here's 10 feet. That's pretty much. All right, and you don't walk and see this, you won't know this. All right, let's put this one down. I always like these, no, we just put, yeah, let's start right here. Okay. We'll move it up. And you know, I like these infomercials. But wait, there's more, and it's all good. We didn't talk about the 5-foot setback. I never heard the 5-foot setback in all of our presentations. All right, here's 5 feet of setback. All right, 5 feet. Okay, a lot more. All right, let's put it down. And then you hear, oh, but wait, if you do it in the next 10 seconds, we'll send it free to you and all that kind of stuff. All right, here's another extra right away. All right. Now, I was going to tape these together, and we can do that if you like. But suffice it to say, that's a pretty far piece. See how I compliment? That's pretty far. And I'm sorry. Do you see that? Everybody, all the councilmen see that. All right. That I'm telling you, the first time I did that, and the first time I walked on these properties, it was an awakening. And I thought that's when my position reversed and said, well, wait. First place, we have a bike access already. You may not want to be able to call it that, but people ride their bikes up there all the time. People walk it all the time. I walked it all the time. You all know that. The people on the south side, their access, they just go out of their backyard. As a matter of fact, if you're on that road, you can stop in and have coffee with them. It's that close in many of these places. And who mentioned Zinn? You can see how that comes right in. And so why would we want to spend all that extra money? All right? And as I said, I was going to, Dave, you got this one more time? When I was going to hold this up, but I'll save you the time. I can tape it together and hold it up and say, I think of Johnny Cochran and OJ's trial. Okay? If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. If the bike path doesn't fit, you must quit. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't fit in a residential area. Now, we can have some discussion on that, and that's very fair play. I'm sure the city would have some comments on that, and that's okay. In my mind, it doesn't. Okay? I was also in the engineering portion of this, and I'll get to that. I was responsible for the whole site except sales and marketing. Engineers report. The engineering, we have a lot of room for improvement. We've done quite well for engineering projects in the past, but looking at this one and how it's been spread out, we did not do a particularly very good job. The things changed. And when you do an AR in the private sector, what we call a CAR, capital asset request, if anything on that changes, I'm telling you, those things are cast in concrete. You better get all new approvals. If a spec changes, it's got to start, everybody gets a chance to get an approval. If you do a cost overrun, it has to stop immediately. And I'll tell you, I saw an engineer fired on the spot for running a cost, it was a couple $100,000, it was a multi-million-dollar project, and he only ran it over by 100,000. He was gone the next day because why didn't you get the approvals? Well, it's supposed to get done. I just thought I'd go ahead. It doesn't play. We had many, what I considered, as I looked through the CT reports, changes. And I didn't realize I had to micromanage. We should not, council should not micromanage engineering projects, but we can do it. I've done it before, and we'll do it again. I have both I think we will invite both CT, and I don't want an executive. I want the engineer who is negotiating with Sharon, the Parks Board. Who negotiates for us? It's us. We don't have a contract person do that. And I'd like to have the acquisition person from Dunrobin came, because I've heard from many, many people that that was not a very, and she has a tough job. He or she has a tough job. But at the same time, you have to treat everybody with respect, and you have to give them the actual facts, not like, hey, my way or the highway. And if you want to say we're going to use eminent domain, you better have talked to these people. All right? Is that fair to say? That was very troubling to me. Okay. I think the citizens can speak after me. I think they can either confirm my thoughts on this and what I've observed from talking to them. I think it's accurate, but it's not a presentation. It's just simply a reflection of what people told me. And these you now know the at-large people, please don't hesitate to talk to them. Now, a couple other just quick items. I always kind of am on the out of the shall we say, what's available in the newspaper. Very recently, very, very recently, okay, Liberty Township got a grant for a walking, biking path. All right, it's in the Inquirer just a little while ago. And I went out and actually looked at it and walked it. All right, it is a $1 million safety grant to conduct a multi-use path in Liberty Township, Central Business District. Okay, and it's almost $1 million. It would provide access between Liberty Way and Yankee, and it goes under Ohio 129. It goes under a highway bridge. There's not a house in sight. There are businesses, no problem at all. And this is a connectivity plan, and we agree with connectivity. This was a great project for them. All right, it's a 10-foot wide situation. All right, but out of that $1 million cost, how much do you think Liberty Township paid? Would you like to take a guess? $20,000. I want to know who wrote their grant, because we're looking at paying 40% out of $800,000. Whoa, back up the bus. How did that happen? I mean, this is the exact quote. There is no cost to the township other than the $20,500 the township spent on preliminary feasibility studies. Preliminary feasibility studies. Interesting dilemma for us. Also, a little note that I know we're to negotiate with the park board, and sometimes they are not the easiest people in the world to deal with. I think everyone would know that. And very recently in the paper, they announced what they wanted to do, and they pulled it back in because the pushback was so great. That was, we currently pay $30 per 100,000 for the property, for the parks. They want to jack that to $98 per 100,000, 30 to 98. It was going to be on the ballot this November, but they took it off because they got so much heat. But they promised to have it on for next November. I think, when we say, well, we don't want you to use our park, I thought the whole purpose of the park is to get people in. Very disappointed in the whole concept of that. Okay. Now I did talk about CT, and that the original engineering, the city's match was 263. Right now it's almost, it's about $200,000 more. Now that would cause a variance. When we get exception reports from ARs, big exception, that would require the whole project to be revisited. And we looked at that, and it's amazing that we did not come back to council with these changes, because Sharon Woods is also changing it. Now, my last thought. I haven't been too long, Vicki, have I?
You're fine.
Okay.
I got all night.
Okay, well, no, but not everybody does, all right. All right, I said there's a lot of little nuts and bolts that we could argue about, and it's not worth it. Who did this? Why didn't you didn't get you were said to have gotten a letter, nobody responded. Nobody got it, apparently, except perhaps one person maybe. But I can't find, what should I say? When you send a letter to supposedly 26 people and you get no response, pretty unusual. Then I was told, well, out of those 26 people, we're going to need 13 of them. We're going to have to get a permanent right of access, if you will. And wait a minute, if you're going to get the 13 people and you're going to deal with them, 13 people can't agree on a free lunch. And there's going to be issues. you're going to have to get that easement, that permanent easement, there are going to be issues. And no one mentioned, oh, by the way, if we don't get it, we're going to go eminent domain. Never heard that. I've told you at law committee, and I'll say it again tonight. I will never approve eminent domain to be used against our citizens if it is not a dire circumstance and if there are no other options. And trust me, there are other options here. There's one already in place. All right? So why it's not a dire safety, I mean, the safety problem is a walk between, up on the north side between the apartment complex and the playground. That's the only complaints I've got over the years. That troubles me very much. All right? There's a lot of issues. The one, when someone says, hey, this is a 10-foot path, when you hear that, path, that's what I defined it as. And when I thought 10-foot path, I thought, well, that's the whole thing. That's just not one part of it. Remember, hang on, there's more. Think about that. That's where you really start to see that's trouble. Now, I've kind of waxed on here a little more than I should have, but a couple quick thoughts. The best thought was I did receive this email today, and it summarizes exactly what I've been thinking and saying to you. It said that, okay, we were provided with a CT update, the illustration of the shared use path from the 8-foot drawing down to the current 10-foot. Really, it's not an issue. It's a much deeper issue. It does a nice job of showing what impact a path of this size would have on the individual properties along Kemper Road, and why a path of this size in this neighborhood would work as opposed to being too large in another. Okay? Who determines?
Mr. Schmidt, I don't want to interrupt you. You have to use the microphone.
Okay.
We're not going to be able to hear you.
Yeah, the important thing is, I was saying that when you determine that the size of this neighborhood, the path of this size in this neighborhood would work as well, it would work as opposed to being too large in another. So that means some neighborhoods are too large, it's too large for, and some it's okay with. Well, if it's okay with all the residents, okay. I mean, if they want it and they say if this is, well, all right. On the other hand, if one of the neighbors says, I don't like it, and you say, well, by the way, we're going to use eminent domain, I have a real problem with that. Because what one man's front yard means to him is not what another man's front yard means to him. One man might have nothing there, another may have years of landscaping. All this has to be taken into account. My point is, there's a clear distinction. If it can be good for some neighborhoods and not good for others, who makes that decision? It is not the 7 council members sitting around this room. I guarantee you it is not. This is a heavy decision, and I will never be a part of doing that because it's just, I do not want to be a part of a community that if you disagree with it, they take your property. That's the concept that you would get out. And I don't want to have anything to do with that. All right, now I'm going to wind up my quote with the last one. You won't hear it. Now, these poor council people, they have to hear all these private sector. Okay. When I was finishing up my thesis at UC, I worked for Professor Orchin, Milton Orchin, a Jewish professor. He was a very close friend of Dr. Albert Sabin. You remember Dr. Sabin of the polio virus, the oral vaccine. And I learned a lot in the 4 years of the Jewish culture. He didn't proselytize or anything like that, but it was just being around someone who had that culture. And one of my absolute favorite quotes that I always said I would take with me the rest of my life was from the Talmud. And the Talmud is the Jewish collection of their laws, their regulations, their histories, and so forth. And the Talmud suggests that wisdom cannot be taught. It must be acquired. I'm telling you, the last couple of weeks, I have acquired a lot of wisdom talking with people and walking around. So thank you. I hope I presented something to you. I'm not pointing fingers or anything like that, but I'm trying to reflect what I've learned and seen. Thank you very much.
Okay. You are going to get an opportunity to speak. However, I did get a call, and Mr. Cook would also like to do a presentation. So I don't need to do my share screen. Is that correct?
I just need you to, the one file I have given you. That's all.
I don't.
Or Terry, whatever's on the memory stick. That's all I need.
I thought that's what we were setting up as
No,
council.
no. Okay. Can
Okay.
can you set that up? Josh, can you help us set that up?
Yeah, I missed. Where is the file located?
It's in the computer in the closet.
Oh, okay. Is it on a USB drive?
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
It's a PDF file. It's just one file.
Do I just need to share my screen?
Yeah. Vicky, if you open up a File Explorer window, you'll be able to browse to that USB drive and open up the file.
Dave, can I make a comment? I'm as a site manager for the operation. The quality engineer is like an itch you can't scratch.
Dave, is that it? Okay. All right. Thank you, Josh.
Good evening. My name's Dave Cook. In my profession, my title is a continuous improvement engineer. Essentially, that means I solve problems. Right? So we have a process that we went through here that has served the city fine in past projects that were successfully completed. Okay? But in this particular case, there certainly issues arose, and we see that. I could say that, my professional experience would tell you, we had problems, but when I see everyone here and the feedback that I've received and all that, that should tell everyone. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to believe we've had some problems, right? Even though it's served us well in the past, it's not served us well right now. If I was at work, we would have something called a CAR, C-A-R, right? It's a corrective action response. Could be internal, something we identify and we fix it, or it could be external from the customer, or in this case, in your case, the residents. So the first thing we would do is we get a cross-functional team together, right? We would lay out what we're going to do to correct the problem. And I would tell everyone in the beginning that's what this is, what a corrective action response, it is not a complaint session. It is not a finger pointing session, right? It is a way to get at the root cause of the problem or problems and solve it, right? The minute you start finger pointing, it will not be effective. Everybody's going to put the defense shield up and they're going to protect. And no, we have to all be together, and you need a cross-functional team. I'd start by walking through the process and create something called a process flow map, right? I put Post-it notes up there, and if anybody's worked with me, everybody knows, give me a stack of Post-it notes and I'll process flow map till the cows come home, right? So we go through the process. It's a great visual tool so you could see, here's what we just did, right? We get the team together and we start looking at ways where it did not meet our expectations, right? And then we'd come up with a new one. And then we'd agree that this is how we want to proceed forward. And the next step is people that are involved are going to be used in the future. We have to train them. I cannot hold any associate accountable unless they've been properly trained, right? We'd implement it and see how it works. Maybe we need to tweak it, maybe not, maybe revisit it years down the road. So once again, I look at you've got a problem and we need to get to the root cause and solve it, right? Not saying it's a bad process, but there could be gaps in that process. When I also look at what was the goal of the shared use path, the bike path, right? There could be several goals. One of them was to get pedestrians from point A to point B safely, right? So the goal was, let's put the bike path in. Well, thanks to Mr. Pugh, Charlie Pugh out there, he opened my eyes, right? And if you look up at the screen, we have it right now. If you look at the bottom left, so let me take a step back. I went ahead and walked it this past Saturday. That's what you'll see. Approximately 9:45 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. I parked at the Lakeside Lodge parking lot. I got out of my car, so that'd be the top right, walked down. I didn't measure it. Looked like maybe a 10-foot wide path, somewhere around there. Went up over the bridge, over on Kemper Road, probably about a 6-foot sidewalk. Came back down, went to the boat harbor, where the playground is. Then I went out toward right about where the guard shack is, and where the yellow line is was a lightning experience. So you go from another roughly 10-foot path to
a two-lane street, right? I think Mr. Flaggy brought that up early on. So from between the two yellow lines is a two-lane street, right? And most of the time it's shaded. So it got a little toasty Saturday morning later on. So it was nice to be in the shade. But essentially, that's what you've got. So I did a little bit. I'm an engineer, right? So a little geeky. I got to get some data. I love data. So what I did is, as I'm walking down, and you'll see that in the top left, right up here. So as I was walking down from Lakeside Lodge, the main entrance, I counted 69 pedestrians. Could be kids in a stroller, could be adults, 69. There are 11 dogs and 6 bikes. So I get all the way down to near the main entrance and I walk back. Counted 73 pedestrians, 5 dogs, and 2 bikes. All totaled, in that time, I saw 138 pedestrians, 16 dogs, and 8 bikes. So the ratio of bikes to pedestrians didn't surprise me. I guess what did surprise me a little bit was the amount of people there at that time. This wasn't some hidden gem that nobody knew about. It was being used. Now, once again, I counted them if they were on the path. I don't know where they entered it because there's a lot of ways to get in, get off. If you were on the path, I counted you. That was my criteria. So what I kind of took away from this was about 70% of the different distance. It's a 2-lane road, in my opinion, way better than a bike path. I could put 100 bikes on there and still not, they're not going to get away the pedestrians. For the most part, it's in great shape. There are parts on the edges that you can see where water erosion has taken part, right? But you still have plenty of room to get around those areas. Other thing, okay, walk up Kemper Road versus here. I'm in the woods. It's nice. It's serene. I don't have cars flying by me. And I felt much safer. Actually, it was a great experience. The only negative experience I had was I got halfway through and I realized I didn't put my Fitbit on. I didn't get credit for my steps. But aside from that, if you just look at this, everything we have right now is there. And in my opinion, it's a better option. More serene, it's shaded, it's wide, right? And we don't have to do anything. You can make comments, how do you get there safely? Boat Harbor, front entrance. Valid points, right? But to say that we need the bike path when we have something there, I totally disagree. And once again, I want to thank Charlie for bringing that to my attention. I'm going to have to walk it more. It's a beautiful experience. The other thing I want to talk about is if anyone's familiar with Six Sigma methodology, you follow the DMAIC process. So it's a way to solve problems. No, the continuous improvement tool. There's a project we were on. We got our cross-functional team together. We did our process flow map, a few other things. And just like at work, you don't get everybody all the time. Well, one associate had to go off, so we continued on. We get through our cause and effect matrix, FMEA, and there's a point where you rank them, right? You do your nice, pretty Pareto chart, say, here's the things that we've prioritized we're going to work on first. Before you go there, we do something called a sanity check, right? And about that time, our associate came back in and like, here's what we've got. She looked at us like, you're in the headlights. No, you're missing this. We thought we knew everything. We did not. She held some knowledge that we didn't know, right? So we did have to go back and do some rework, right? We had to rescore things and re-rank them. And we came to a successful conclusion and we were able to sustain it long term. I guess the point I want to make is every project, there comes a point you really think you've got the knowledge, you think you understand it, but you never really know. And kind of the very last gate you go through is something called a sanity check, right? And that's kind of where I see us at right now. As far as eminent domain, I kind of consider, you hear in politics, the nuclear option. I mean, that is the last option. We're essentially taking something that you own, right? Yeah, we're gonna give you money, right? But it is something that we should not, I mean, you cannot take it lightly. I'd also comment, when we talk about doing this, did everybody fully understand what they're getting into, even the ones that signed up for it? I can't answer that. I mean, do you understand that the 3 feet on the end of the 5 and the 10, you could count, that's the right of way. So based what happened in Copperfield, I guess when I understood it, permit was pulled, they came in, they put some 5G cable in. Okay, had some orange poles sticking out of the ground. I called Mr. Lucas, called the people that put it in, took care of it, and they removed those out of our neighborhood. They're still outside on Fields Erdel, and you'll see them on Conray also. The point I want to make is that's the right of way. That can be done, right? I could put a cable box, right? Right now, as it stands with the FCC, unless it's changed, right? Local jurisdictions have no say over if somebody puts a 5G tower, cell tower. I'll call it, if you've not seen them, they're very large looking light poles, right? They're not the traditional ginormous cell towers. I don't want to mislead you. But it's one thing they have it by the street, right? That's where my right of way is. Now I'm putting it in 15 to 18 feet further in from the street, right? Roughly, right? I just need to make sure everybody understands that. So 5 feet of grass, 10-foot path, and then the right of way, right? All right. So in summary, I guess I'd like to say, you know, when you kind of think about what Mr. Schmidt had said, reflection, use a football analogy, we are really in the red zone right now getting ready to score. And we never should have kicked off. Is where I see us out now. We do need to look at our process, review it, and we need to correct it. We need to solve the problems that got us here. Once again, it has done well for us, but not at this point. The sanity check, at least in my opinion, is we don't need this because we already have it. It's there, it exists. And then what else could we do? So I did mention access points, right? You hear sidewalks, maybe this or that. You know, my continuous improvement team, we have a philosophy. And it says, don't let perfect get in the way of better, right? Maybe, you know, once again, what's better than what we have right now? Is it a sidewalk? I don't know. We're not going to answer that tonight. But we don't have to be perfect, right? And then finally, I would say, obviously, there were some mistakes made, right? Mr. Schmidt covered some of those. We're not getting into finger pointing, and that will not be constructive. We want to solve the problem, correct the process, so the next time we go down this path, it works, right? So even though we had some failings on our end, on the process, that doesn't mean we need to put those onto you. And as the old saying goes, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. So finally, I would like to say I'm 100% opposed to this. I don't feel it's needed. And based on some of the feedback I received from everyone here, and Mr. Schmidt had touched on it, the way things were presented to you, I apologize. Once again, I wasn't part of that, and I'm relying on the trust because I heard the same thing over and over from other residents. It was misleading at best, right? So I get it, mistakes happen. I've seen it, miscommunications happen. Some well-intentions go south. People think somebody's thinking this and they're really thinking that, and so on, right? So my commitment to you is to work together to improve this process and correct the problems that got us here today. And I don't feel in any stretch of the imagination, we need to take your property for something that we already have. Thank you.
Are there any other? Go ahead, Mr. Lippert.
The area west of the, after the guard shack, you've got the parkour course there, right?
Which course, I'm sorry?
The parkour, I don't know, it's like a business.
Oh, yes.
Talking about.
That's not open to vehicle traffic, is it?
No.
No, it is not. It,
But it's closed off to vehicle traffic.
yeah. The only vehicle I witnessed,
Okay, guys,
Sorry.
if you could, please, we're talking over each other right now. If you'll raise your hand, this gentleman did.
I just wanted to verify that. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
the only vehicle I saw was the Park District golf cart.
No,
Sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Oh, yeah.
One other thing, there was not any signage that said no bikes, no skateboards, anything. I didn't see anything. It was open to anyone.
Okay, are there any other council people that want to speak on this evening? Seeing none, I'm going to open it up to the public. Ma'am, I'm going to let him go since he raised his hand first. Okay. Did you want to speak now, sir? Come up and tell us your name and give us your address, please. Thank you.
My name is Tim Argo. I live at 4044 East Kemper. And I just wanted to, address Mr. Lippert's comment. They do use the park course for vehicle traffic during Christmas, what do they call it? Christmas light show
Oh, okay.
for the overflow. So that's the only time it is used for vehicle traffic. But it is, like I said, during that Christmas time, they do use it for vehicle traffic.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
So that's my backyard. I step off of my property onto the park trail.
Mhm.
So you can come in off of Kemper Road up at the harbor, go down a short distance, get on the park course, which used to be a two-way traffic way back when, and they turned that into the park course. That road takes you directly down to 42, where you go out the other entrance, and then you would turn left to go into the town. Now, he is right about the Christmas holiday season, but that is at nighttime when it's dark, when they have the Christmas thing, they just lead the traffic. So there's not anybody, you're not allowed, no one's out there on bikes or anything like that at that time of night. So it's a nighttime event. It is a two-way street. And like you said, it has plenty of room for everybody, and it takes you from one entrance directly down to the other entrance out onto 42. So it's very in and out.
Okay, thank you.
That's not all I wanted to say, but I'll.
Yeah, you're welcome to get.
Okay, so
Just remind us of your name again, please, because it all has to go on record.
it's Elaine Wolf, and
Okay.
it's 3935 East Kemper Road.
Thank you.
So I am on the south side of Kemper Road, so I am across the street from where the bike path is going in. I'm across the street from the Woodview condos that are back in that area. Kemper Road, back in the 50s, there were children that were probably raised on that street. I know one right there. But now it's become a very heavily trafficked area just because things have grown and expanded. My point is we have a park. I'm not sure where this bike trail is going. It seems like you're going from UDF or Sharon Woods to UDF, which is approximately 4/10 of a mile. I'm not sure what's next. I mean, you get to the bottom where UDF is, you have like 5 lanes of traffic that you have to cross over to get to and that's another thing we're so confused with. Where's this going? Where is this bike path going? Are you spending all this money putting a path that's going nowhere? And the people across the street that live in the condos, all of us are elderly on that street, and none of us have children, okay? I see my house is opened on the inside. I have no walls, so I can see out my door wherever I am in my home. I see probably, I'm not kidding you, 3 avid bike riders that come up Kemper Road. It's very rarely do I see a bicycle on that road. They don't ride on bike paths. The one that you showed at Summit Park, I drive Plainfield Road to go to Blue Ash Golf Course where I work. Great path. I'm going down the road. Where's the biker? On Plainfield Road. They don't use a bike path. There are no children in the condos across the street from me. Anybody that lives in those condos, including my neighbors who live in the home across the street from me, come down my driveway, go on my path, and they go onto the agility course. We have no, we don't have the traffic you think. I mean, you have one worker who doesn't even work anymore, I guess because the restaurant's closed down, that would walk to work. And I have one gentleman who walks home. I don't know if he's here or not, but it's a very not trafficky for human beings. Now, up where the apartments are, going towards the park entrance, you will find more families. And there is a sidewalk up there that goes into the park. But we don't have people walking down our roads. We don't have people in our yards. We don't, I mean, I just want to know, where is it going to connect? Why are we taking down all these trees, which I have many pictures because I went to everybody's house and took pictures of all of their trees that we're taking down? Where is this bike path going to connect to? And what's it going to connect to? And when is it going to connect to it? So are we going from Sharon Woods to UDF to get an ice cream cone? And then we've got these people, wherever these people you think that we have that are going to come back up the hill. If they are, we're going to have malt cups in our yards. Who's responsible for, taking care of a 10-foot wide snow removal or ice removal? If somebody gets hurt on that property, who's responsible for, if you guys take the land, are you guys responsible for cleaning that all up? Are you responsible for anybody that gets entry on that property? I don't know the law, but I'm telling you, you've got that beautiful agility course and it's in my backyard and I'm okay with it. I think you're wasting money and I don't think it's needed.
Anyone else this evening that wishes to speak? Come on up. I just need your name and address, please. I think it's okay if you you can walk on the path.
It's a bikeway.
The white.
Can't walk on it. My name's Tom Dusa, and I live at 3958 East Kemper Road. It's right where a Woods View comes in, and it's basically in the middle of the project that we're talking about here tonight. And I appreciate the opportunity that I'm allowed here tonight to at least talk about this. That was our big concern when it came down. It didn't appear that we had an opportunity. And I think it's important that you hear the residents that are mainly the ones that are affected, which are the ones on Kemper, both sides, and let you hear them, what they have had to deal with in this process. And even the ones that feel that they've maybe agreed to it and they feel it's okay. I even would argue in my discussions with them that they did it under the idea that they didn't have a choice. They had to do this if they wanted to be ready because you were going with eminent domain. So let me just give you a little bit of background. I've heard the councilman and I really do appreciate what they've done and the explanation. And this is gold right here. I'm in a little bit, probably the most unique position here. I'm in the middle of this thing. My yard is one of the biggest ones that are going to get actually damage to it just because of how my lay of the land is. And I am an engineer. I understand what they mean. The philosophy in their heads, our engineers' heads are problem solvers. So I'm a civil engineer, surveyor with my own company. I've designed many things, including bikeways, okay? When this was presented to me, I asked for the plans and they gave them to me. Everybody was nice about that part of it. And as soon as I saw the plans, I knew we had a problem, okay? I knew this. I didn't need this to be rolled out. And I think a lot of people here that are behind me, they know it too. And it's a little bit of surprising that the people that voted on it had to explain it to the other people here on the extent of this. And that's the biggest argument here tonight, that there's other options. I know that. I can tell you several of them, and there's safer options. Matter of fact, the option that's being presented is probably the most dangerous one, and it should be a concern for Sharonville as well. The crossings themselves, there's a liability involved in those. And it's just, we have, I feel we should have a right to at least express to you that we have concerns, that it isn't like we were told by the appraiser, oh, there's only one or two people that are against it. I think you're going to find that there's a lot of people against it. So I won't, I'll keep it short so that they can do their talking.
You're fine.
I will ask one other thing. I talked to another resident who isn't healthy enough to make the trip down here. His name is Scott Hartsock, and he's the last house at the bikeway. And I was surprised to hear recently, just 2 days ago, that he feels like he's responsible for this. So he wrote a letter, he couldn't make it, and he asked me to read it here at this meeting. So if you would, this is from Scott Hartsock. He's at 4096 East Kemper Road. And this is to the city of Sharonville. Sharonville, Ohio City Council. My name is Scott Hartsock. I am not able to attend the meeting tonight due to health reasons. I have drafted this letter to be read to the council on my behalf concerning the bike trail for Kemper Road. I have lived at the same house for 47 years, and over the years I have seen many people walking to and from Sharon Woods Park. Some young, some old, and a lot with kids. The one thing they all have in common is they have to walk in the street or on the grass. The parents with the kids have to push their strollers in the grass or in the street, and the cars driving up and down Kemper Drive over the speed limit all the time. I have been pushing for a sidewalk for several years and was always told that the city cannot afford it. So a few years ago, I was talking to one of the council members running for election and asked him about sidewalk. I don't remember who it was, but about 6 months later, he stopped back at the house and told me that the city agreed to the sidewalk. So I guess I was the one who started all this. Now the project has changed from sidewalk going from my house to Shadow Hill Apartments to a bike path from Kemper Fields to UDF. And from what I understand, the bike trail will be on homeowners' property, taking up 15 feet of their land, when a simple sidewalk will take care of the problem. And it's signed by Scott, so.
Do you mind if we keep that, sir?
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't mind.
I'll just give it to our clerk.
Vicki?
Yes, Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, I was the councilman that he spoke with, and his big concern was, as exactly as Tom said, and I actually gave him updates. He constantly would talk with me about it, and he was one of the people, I sat in his driveway and watched the people go by. All we wanted was a simple sidewalk down the Shadow Hill in Woodsview. That's all we wanted. That's all he wanted. That's all I told him. That's all I want. I'll figure out if we, well, some things. Okay, that's enough.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that. We will keep that. I do have one person that is in attendance that would like to speak via Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and allow her to speak. Maria?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak via Zoom. My name's Maria Litzis. I live at 3980 East Kemper Road. And I maybe be slightly dissenting with my neighbors, but not entirely. While I agree that maybe the bike path might be too much, it is certainly a large project, especially with the access to the trail being right there. I would disagree that we don't need a sidewalk. We definitely need a sidewalk all the way from UDF to the park. I moved into this house May 10th and worked from home because of COVID for the first 2 months that I owned the house, so all of April and May, and watched from my window people walking in both directions past my house. So I live kind of between the entrance to the apartment complex and the entrance to the condos. Every day when I drive home from work now, I see people walking to and from UDF as well as to the park. I feel like a sidewalk to the park is definitely a safety issue and something that we should all be for. And the park itself is one of the main reasons why I purchased my house in this neighborhood. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Maria. All right, are there any other residents? Ma'am, come on up. Give us your name and address, please.
My name is Alicia Salas. My partner and I live at 3850 East Kemper. The bike path proposed by the city poses numerous negative impacts to my property and increases safety risks along Kemper Road. Not to leave out that the process of handling communication with impacted residents has been poor, to say the least. If the path is to be on the north side of Kemper Road, cyclists would be forced to cross the road in order to access the park. This raises a question I've had since the beginning. Why is the bike path not planned for Sharon Woods side of Kemper? Whether or not a bike path would draw new traffic is yet to be seen. However, I've been working from home for going on half a year and have not witnessed traffic issues between cyclists and cars that would be improved with a bike path. Residents leaving their house would need to cross the bike path in order to access Kemper Road, increasing the opportunity for accidents. Will the city be liable when there is an injury in front of my home? Bike paths require continued funding for maintenance. Food wrappers from patrons of UDF will undoubtedly litter the street. How often can I expect the city to collect garbage and debris? Kemper Road is a beautiful drive, and by removing the landscaping, you are destroying the aesthetic value. For my house in particular, you are destroying 4 gorgeous trees that provide enormous shade, privacy, and act as a natural sound barrier, thusly diminishing the peaceful enjoyment of our home. I have real concern for the value lost not only to curb appeal, but overall home value when the city has failed to reach out with why they see value in the bike path. My front door is already a short distance from the road. With the research I was required in understanding the impact to my property, I learned that for every 10 feet encroached upon the front of the house, the home values decreased. This was highlighted to us when talking with our mortgage company and how a complete refinance of the property would be required. This puts a significant time and monetary burden on us and any neighbor with a mortgage. I've laid out many negative aspects and impacts this project will have, and I will be glad to continue this discussion if Mr. Mayor or City Council members are willing to engage. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here this evening. It has been a frustrating process with little communication and being left in the dark after the initial proposal. However, the minimal communication there was only to continuously threaten that if I didn't sign, the matter would be taken to court. Many neighbors felt strong-armed by Dunrob and Associates into signing without knowing their options or risk the fear of litigation. It left the impression that the city had no desire to hear the concerns of residents. I hope that the city will use this as a learning experience for how to better handle residents in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe someone else would come on up, sir.
Nice for not having that thing on. Again, as earlier spoken, my name is Michael Flaggy. I live at 4029 East Kemper Road. My mother lives 6 houses down from me, and not to give you a history lesson, but she was the second house on Kemper Road for a mile and a half at each way. The Deuces actually live in the house I was first. I thank you, council members, about stating the obvious, because I know Sharon Woods inside out. I grew up there. And when that cowbell rang for me to come home from the woods, I had to find the quickest way to get from point A to point B. So there are other options on getting to and from, but that's beside the point. When I was 6 years old, we were across the street in the Deuces raking leaves, me, my sister, and my brother. An unfortunate accident happened when he was 9. He was killed by a car crossing Kemper Road. I see the safety concerns both on Woods View, as already outlined, as well as going into Shadow Hill Apartments, as well as crossing Kemper Road to get to the park. And I really would like the council members to understand that Kemper Road is a very busy intersection. And when there's a backup on 275, Kemper Road becomes a parking lot for people trying to get around it. So when I start looking at this, and I'm sorry, Maria, I don't know if she's still on Skype or Zoom or whatever she's on to listen to this. Like I said, I live at 4029 East Kemper Road. You look down my driveway, and I look right into where these people are coming from. And you have to start looking at use versus need. Now, I'm fortunate. I own a logistics company, and I have a lot of flexibility in my free time. And I've been working out of my house for 25 years. The 2 to 3 people a day that go down to UDF should not encumber or hinder or blight other people's properties because they want to walk down to UDF. First of all, it's not that far of a car ride, and it's a long walk uphill, which, you know, that's one thing. But most of the people, most of the traffic, I'd say 95% of the people, because I hang out on my laptop and I work outside. So I'm seeing people all day long, 3 to 4 hours a day. And I see one, maybe two people that are using the sidewalk that goes from Shadow Hill Apartments to Woodsview, okay? Most of the people I see are the people that are in the 1,200 apartments that live in Shadow Hill that come walk down, like, because there's only two entrances to get in and out of Shadow Hill. One's on 42 and one's on Kemper Road. So they're very busy. These people are walking down, and once again, they're taking a look, they're going east, and there's a sidewalk, and then it stops right near the Hard Sox. If they could do something to fix that, because most of the traffic's coming from Shadow Hill. I mean, my God, I wish you had the numbers, or hell, you want to put up a camera in my yard, the number of people, and, you know, most of them are of various backgrounds, okay? I sometimes talk to them, sometimes they don't understand what I'm saying, and a lot of times people don't even listen to me, that's okay. But the number of people that come out of Shadow Hill, if you ever wanted to do some sort of site study to see how many people actually come out that and into Sharon Woods, owned a Harley Davidson, and the way that bend turns, a lot of times cars don't have a whole lot of time to see people crossing the road. Once again, it's a lot of tall trees. So I don't know if you noticed that, you know, when you were doing that, because the sight of when you make that turn and people are crossing across the road, it's a dangerous situation. I don't want to see another situation, anybody else die on my street. You know, that's all I had to say, and appreciate if you guys actually go up there, play golf, and actually see it firsthand coming in through Kemper versus coming in Swing Road. You know, something should be done about that, whether it's flashing lights, a walkway that's actually observed as a walkway for these people to get from one side to the other side. But to go all the way down to UDF for one or two people, like I said, I got a lot of money in my house. I don't want certain blight issues to affect my property value. And some of the beautiful trees, like in Tom's yard, and the people coming up the street. I mean, I had to take down 2 ash trees because of the emerald ash borer. If not, they'd still be there. And sadly, I missed both of them. So I can certainly empathize with my fellow neighbors for their opposition against this bike path, you know, in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Come on up, sir.
My name is Brian Lansall. I live at 3922 East Kemper Road. Very different story than some of my neighbors. I'm very new to Sharonville and the community. Technically been living here almost 2 years, but my story and my love affair with the Sharonville community started about 7 years ago. I was fortunate enough to take a position in a neighboring organization. And whether it was daily trips to get supplies for the organization, or was it just to find some place for lunch and to spend my lunch hour, I fell in love with East Kemper Road. So about 2 years ago, my family decided we wanted to find our long-term home. I had one stipulation. I didn't care where it was, as long as it was on East Kemper Road. And for one reason, the mature trees, the park-like setting, and the manicured front lawns. Not for a 15-foot bike path. So my 2 points of contention were, if a bike path were to be installed and we were to move along with this path, I'll be the first resident that puts a for sale sign where my majestic oak tree now sits. My second point of contention was how it was communicated to me as a resident. I figured since I was new to the residency that I missed the planning or the communication stage. It's because I'd only been here a year and a half. When the third party, not a member of the Sharonville Council or the community, approached me, it was very simply put to me, here is your option. Here's the monetary value we're going to give you for your property. If you're not comfortable with that, we're going to pursue the eminent domain. And you're going to lose the monetary value that we're proposing. And the quote was, in a lot of cases, to, when my wife and I had the conversation we had, it was a done deal. This is going to happen whether you wanted to do it or not. So I really like this council, and I'm really encouraged on what I'm hearing tonight, that there is some open minds on taking a step back, to use your phrases, hey, let's not go ahead and score here. Let's take a look and see if we should even start this game. So I appreciate the time. I just wanted to share my experience with the communication was very poor. I feel like I really got strong-armed into a decision I didn't want to make and have incurred cost to make a decision I shouldn't have to make without my input. So I appreciate your time today, and thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Wendell Branscombe. I live at 3880 East Kemper Road. And I actually spoke at last week's, but this week's layout is really good. But isn't there also a like 6 or 8 foot easement, temporary easement that goes on top of that? Where they come through and take out trees, shrubs? So this is not all the damage that gets done to your front yard. They're going to take out other stuff that's in there too if it happens to be in the way. So to me, I'll say the same thing I said last week. It devalues my property. Excuse me, I'm driving. Because they're basically taking a huge tree out in front and half of a hedgerow. Hedgerow is about 8 foot tall. Right now, I have a lot of privacy from Kemper Road. As the one gentleman spoke about, when there's a problem on 275, it becomes a parking lot. It does, but I still have some privacy. I don't have to sit there and look at all the cars. If this goes through, then it wipes out every bit of that. And we had some of this conversation before, and it's not about money. It's not about money at all. I just don't want this. This is an eyesore. And it's an eyesore for even people on the south side. Because it takes out all the trees and everything else. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Mayor, you said you would like to follow up comment?
Sure. I just as a matter of, because I've had the opportunity to listen to the law committee meeting last week. And obviously I've had the opportunity to read letters from individuals. We've had the opportunity to meet with some of you individually with other council members with regard to this project. And there have been a lot of comments that have made about the project and what it is or how it got to where we're at. So I think it's really important that we share that. With that said, I think it's also very clear as it stands here today, there is not a majority of this council, despite where they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago, there's not a majority of this council that is wanting or desiring to proceed with the need to appropriate property, which would be necessary to do a 10 feet shared use path. So with that said, I think that's very clear. The question is going to be, where do we go from here? But I do feel like there's a couple of things that need to be said. First of all, my understanding of the project, and I'd be happy to be shown that I'm incorrect on this point, but the layout that you have here, I don't believe there's an additional 3 feet of permanent right-of-way beyond the 10-foot path that would go towards your house, all right? My understanding is that the only permanent right-of-way that would, under the current proposal, ends at the 10-foot path if it had to be acquired in the first place. Most of your properties, most of the properties that the path goes through, we already own the right-of-way. The city already has the ability to build this project on most of the properties there without any permanent right-of-way, because the city already owns, for many of you, the first 15 feet of what you see as your front yard, okay? That's just the reality of it. So when this was designed, that's where we were at. So the additional permanent right of way, because there's about 13 properties that needed permanent right of way. It's not for 13, 15 feet. For many of you, it's for 1 or 2 feet, and then if even that much, and some temporary right of way in order for the project to be constructed. So that's one point, but I just feel like we need to clarify with regard to the project itself and how we got to where we're at. But my understanding of where the right of way ends, there's not an additional 3 feet toward your house once the concrete ends, unless we already own that right of way. There may be temporary construction that goes on, but it's not a permanent piece of that beyond the sidewalk. With that said, it doesn't really matter because, like I said, I don't think there's a group of individuals that want to proceed with a 10-foot pathway all the way down. But I want to make that clear. With regard to the issue of why we're building a pathway, we already, and probably a decade plus ago, started the process of saying, and what we heard, and what I think you heard earlier tonight with regard to our comprehensive plan for 2030, is there is a desire from the community as a whole that our city become better connected, that we become better connected through intermodal transportation, but at least walking ability. It is where communities go. It is where communities are going. It's what communities want as a whole. And it's why, bottom line, it's why other governments, federal and state, give us money in order to look at shared use paths like this, as opposed to just building a typical sidewalk. So with that said, with those things in mind, that is what, a decade ago, we started building pathways throughout Sharonville. One of them being along Kemper Road. So if you go down Kemper Road, you will see that there is a path, a shared use path, that goes all the way from Mosteller to Route 42. That was built for the purpose of providing that connectivity between all the different parts of our community. We built the sidewalk along Plainfield Road when we had the opportunity, or when we had the building of sorry, not Plainfield Road, along Fields Erdel Road. When we went out to get funding to resurface that project, we were also able to get funding in order to do that sidewalk that was there. Plainfield Road. And what was kind of interesting is over the last couple of weeks, as we've continued to have these discussions, it's been interesting to go back. And this isn't a new, in other words, this isn't a new topic. In 1970, another council that sit up here dealt with these very same issues with people that wanted sidewalks along Creek and Plainfield roads. And Creek Road was built at that time, Plainfield Road wasn't, and now 50 years later, we built Plainfield Road. And it's an amenity that has gone a long way toward attracting folks along that route. Where does it go beyond that? Because we're not done. It goes to, there's a grant that this council approved in order to continue to connect Kemper Road to our downtown, to our loop area. Because we have requested funding from OKI to include a shared use path that will lead you from downtown, La Rosa's area, all the way up 42 to that intersection of Kemper and Route 42. In fact, it crosses the street at Park 42 there and then goes north, hooks up with our path at that point, and then could go left, could go right, could go east, could go west. And then the goal would ultimately be looking at going all the way up 42 and connecting all the different, because that's what we've heard. That's what we've heard repeatedly from continuous sessions about what do we need to do in order to attract folks, to keep folks here and attract folks to come to Sharonville, is this desire to be connected. That's what led to the examination of this path. And the question is every infrastructure project we do as a city costs some amount of money. It costs some amount of money for us to do it. And the question is, can we do it on our own? Can we do it based on our own income, based on our own revenue that we get as a city? Are there other partners that are out there that give us the ability to have resources to do it? And when we look to those other partners to do things, they expect things from us, or else the funding's not available. And there's all kinds of different grant programs out there. Mr. Schmidt's correct. I'd love to be able to have access to a grant program that would have given us 95% of the funding or 99% of the funding for this particular pathway. That funding model was not available for this pathway. A lot of that has to do with different Ohio Public Works community projects that exist. We're in a different district than what Liberty Township exists in. We've had other projects, infrastructure projects, where a larger percentage of funding was available to us. This was not one of them. So what we knew was OKI was looking for funding proposals to deal with what are called transportation alternative projects. And transportation alternative project means some other way to get around your community other than a car. And that is what developed into the Kemper Road shared use path. We knew we have an issue. We knew we needed to connect. We would have liked something, whether it be a crosswalk, a sidewalk, not a crosswalk, sidewalk, whatever that may be. So at that point in time, the issue was a shared use path. It provides bicycle access. It provides walking access. It provides better access along Kemper Road. It connects all of the residents along Kemper Road, both to Sharon Woods. It connects to ultimately our downtown, but at that point, it connect to our businesses along Kemper Road and provide that safe access for people. And now we have an individual or have an entity that has funding available. That's what we went out to look for. It was 8 feet at that point in time. It was an 8 feet pathway with a 5-foot green space in front of it. So 5 feet from the road, 8 foot worth of pathway. That was what was presented to council. Council approved us to seek that grant, and we were awarded it. There was a change. ODOT decided that we have to go through the Ohio Department of Transportation in order to make that pathway work. ODOT said it's not 8 foot. The definition of a shared use pathway is no longer 8 feet. It has to be 10 feet. So the question at that point is, do we expand this project to a 10 feet pathway and keep the grant funding? Do we scale it back or keep it at the 8 feet, not accept the grant funding? We looked at that. We shared that with council. Here's our options. Here's what we're doing. Here's the decision that we've made. And the bottom line was, it didn't make economic sense to go it on our own at 8 foot. 10 foot didn't seem to be that huge a change over the 8 foot. And so we proceeded with that. That was communicated to this council. This council approved that 10-foot plan. That council approved the funding for us to engineer and design that plan. This council budgeted money for this year in order to build that plan. At that point, it's an issue of what the next step is. So, and that's what gets us to here. Because at some point, you've got it designed, you've got it engineered, you've got it looked at, now you got to decide to do right of way, which all goes along with this, which was all communicated from the very beginning of this project. Back in May of 2019, letters were sent out to all affected properties to say, here's the project, here's where you can find information at. That information still remains on our website as to what the project is and what the design was. And then Dunrobin goes out and starts the process of acquiring property in order of having conversations with you. There are parts of their letter I didn't like. I didn't see it before you got it. If I were writing it, I would have written it differently. We certainly will be having those conversations if we ever get to a point where we have to look at acquiring property in this manner ever again. Regardless, that's where we were at with this project. I don't like the fact that they didn't tell you that ultimately council has to decide whether or not they're going to appropriate the property and thus seek it out, because ultimately it is this council's decision, and you should have known that. That should have been communicated in that letter. Bottom line is, everyone on this council knows that, because I've shared it in my comments to them. I shared it in my comments to them at this council meeting, our last council meeting. I told them that there were at least slightly more than a handful of residents who said they don't want this project, period. It has nothing to do with money. They don't want the project. I know others have communicated directly with you who have also heard that. So your voices have been heard, and your voices are being heard tonight. Your voices were heard at law committee. So you understand that. I've had the opportunity to speak to some of you on the phone, meet some of you in person at your residences. If I hadn't met you before, in order to have these conversations so that we can make the right decisions moving forward. What we need to do is decide where we go from here. And that is the next question, because like I said, if council says we're not going to appropriate anything, and it certainly sounds like that's where this is headed, this 10-foot path can't happen. We've spent $309,000 as a city so far on this path because of the approvals that this council has given. We can build a sidewalk that would be within our right-of-way. We would not need to acquire any right-of-way. It would be somewhere between 4 or 5 feet, more standard sidewalk that would meet some of the safety issues that we've been talking about. I think that is going to be the next conversation that we will have with council is that the direction we are going to go? Because I still believe we have an issue with providing connectivity throughout the entire city. I think that we need to have sidewalks that access the properties along Kemper Road. I believe that this serves that purpose. Maybe we don't need to have it large enough that bikes can come up and down it, but we need to have that walkability. And it continues what I think we've heard from the community as a whole, a desire, I think as you've heard tonight from at least one resident that lives along Kemper Road, is that something that our community as a whole needs to desire and needs to get to. So I will be strongly advocating to this council that we don't waste the $309,000 we already spent on this project, that we serve the entire residents, because we can finish this project with a sidewalk at relatively the same price that it would have cost to the city to do the 10-foot shared use path. But I think it's the right thing to do. I encourage you to welcome to communicate to me. You're welcome to communicate to the rest of this council how you feel about that. Because I know some of you don't want even a sidewalk, much less a 10-foot path. But I do think it's what we need as a city to continue to be a connected community throughout the city as a whole. And I just want you to understand where my position is and how I stand on that as we continue to move forward with whatever project happens. So I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lippert.
I don't have a microphone. I don't know if portable one's available to that battery.
Where's-
Or not, but I'm just worried about the folks online.
Exactly.
I can stream. I have a problem with that. I want to thank all the residents who came out, all the folks who are on Zoom, and all the communications we've had over the last week or two from my colleagues on council, as well as Mayor Hardman. Test.
Give it a minute.
Give it 1 minute. There we go. So chill. Okay. I love living in Sharonville, and I am a very appreciative and feel blessed that I've said it before, that we can disagree agreeably and have some good debate content. One of my concerns was that I expressed in the law committee meeting last week that I just have questions about. Does anybody here from the Kemper Road area remember receiving the 2019 correspondence? Does anybody? Raise your hand, please. If you are on Zoom, can you go to the attendees, Ms. Hoppy? Anybody on Zoom, please raise your hand if you remember.
Fairly new, so she would
Okay.
have been here in 2019.
So one of the comments that Mr. Mayor expressed in one of the communications this week was a suggestion of setting up meetings having to do with communication. I heard what Ms. Stolfs was saying about communication, and I hear where you're coming from. And I appreciate Mr. Mayor getting together all the communications from CT and Dunrobin. And I would just say that I think that first letter was way too subtle. I think it, and I don't know who wrote it. I have no idea, but it talked really vaguely about a Kemper Road project and didn't talk about taking any property. And that letter, as opposed to the letter from Dunrobin, which was certified, I think the first letter that goes out needs to be certified.
I agree.
And that's all I got. Thank you, folks.
I do agree, and I do want to apologize. We passed these legislations, and then we had employees that work for us and do the job. Unfortunately, I don't know where the ball dropped in 2019 or where we were in 17 and 18. When we started this process, you should have been notified. And the mayor and I have talked at length about this. That's going to be fixed. We are going to do better. The mayor suggested that we actually even have a separate council committee now to be part of our projects to help with this and to oversee that. And we are going to do that. I've asked 2 people to already be a part of it, and the third one's gonna kill me, but he has to be on OKI. So he's gonna be part of it. So we are gonna put a committee together, and that will work very closely with our safety service director and our people in public works and community development when we're doing these kind of projects. We will start sending things out certified. So I know for a fact that my residents are being notified. You can and are welcome to come to any council meeting you want. We kind of like this Zoom thing too. So if you want us to continue that, give us your feedback. So if it's easier for you not to drive down here, but be on the computer with me, I'm more than happy to do this every council meeting, if that's easier for the public. But we want you to come. We want you to be a part of things, not just when things are going bad. We want to hear the good things too. We want to hear what you think about your community. We are here to serve you. And that's what we want to do. And you are welcome to come, and we will listen to you anytime you want to come. And I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that, because I felt like people were like, well, we can't come into council. Yes, you can. That's why we're here. So hopefully this will be resolved this evening. I am going to go ahead and ask for a voice vote when we get down to our legislation of do they want to not proceed with the bike path sidewalk version, and we'll go back and maybe have a work session with administration and decide what works best and what we can do that doesn't harm and that provides safety that we're looking for and connectivity that we're looking for. And then we can come back and we will present that to you before we move forward. We can have a meeting with all the residents, with all the limitations right now with COVID. We probably need to have it in the old gym down at the recreation center so I can seat everybody in there and everybody can be heard. But we could have a town hall meeting, that kind of a thing, and go over this with you. So with that said, is there any other comments on the Kemper Road thing? Because I'm going to go ahead and get going on our business, because we still have business to take care of. I just need you to come up here, because you drive my sweet little clerk of courts crazy trying to put this in the minutes.
You know, it's Elaine Wolf, 3935. I just ask that when you guys do get together and you talk about this, hopefully not the bike path, but if you, obviously you're going to discuss the sidewalk. If you would just please talk about maybe taking a survey of the traffic from, say, the condos Woodway down to UDF and see if there's really a need for a sidewalk and see how many people are walking there or not walking there. And I also ask each and every one of you council members to please take the time to walk down the street. I do have photos that I took in everybody's yards on the side of the street from the park down with the trees. And a lot of the trees, I put a little pack together. Well, the library did, that's, never mind. But, and I'm sure you already know this, but these trees have been there for years and years and years, and they are beautiful trees. And you may put a sidewalk through there, but you got to understand that when you have a tree and the tree is this big, and here's the trunk, that the root systems come down from the last tip of every branch. So therefore, if you put the sidewalk through, please take into consideration how many trees that we're going to lose in our yards, because you're going to run that sidewalk or dig down, and you're going to, and you will be in the drip line of all the trees that are on those properties. Now, I don't know if and when that does happen, if you could build the ground up where you don't have to dig and affect the trees. I don't know if that affects the roots by, putting too much dirt on top of a root that's already pre-existing, but I do ask the trees are so important to us, or you're just going to have a bare neighborhood, because all of our trees are extremely mature, and most of them are all the way out to the road. So please take that into consideration when you talk about the sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just on that point, I think, and it was something that came up after Mr. Schmidt and I had the pleasure of meeting with Mr. Pugh and Mr. Branscombe, and I think it was Mr. Huster, I believe, was there as well. That Paul came and had a conversation about the need to repopulate with some type of greenery to alleviate the removal of other pieces of greenery. So that's something I think, regardless of what we take, we'll be looking at adding in. Again, they're not going to be, if we take out a tree that's been there for X number of years, not going to be in the same height and same things along those lines. But that's always something that that is something that we will look at in order to continue to provide an aesthetically pleasing boulevard that exists along Kemper Road. I agree. I think I said that. You really need to, if you want to keep talking, it's up to Ms. Hoppy.
Stay up here.
You got to stay up here. So
I'm just saying that in this, for example, is my neighbor's house, and he bought his house because of this tree. And this provides all the shade to his house. And when you see and you go through these pages, or when you just take the time to go down there, the pine trees, everything is, it gives us privacy. It's a sound barrier for us. It's part of the nature. I mean, we do have the park behind us, but I just ask that you consider, I mean, you can't take a tree like the size of that flagpole and replace, a tree like this, because we're all going to be dead by the time it gets back to this. Every one of us will be. So we're just asking you to please take that into consideration and just walk down the road. And remember the drip line, that's where the roots are.
And if you have that in like a form where you could email that to us, would you please email it to all elected?
I will email all of my, if you give me that contact.
We can
Okay,
forward it.
because she put this together to me at the library because my computer was down.
Normally the lady from the library is here, so I'm sure, oh, there she is.
Well, so one of the girls helped me today, and she was absolutely wonderful, but somehow we put the same pictures on a lot of them on the same page, but I still have a lot more, and I took so many pictures, and you just get the feeling of the street and the neighborhood when you walk in. And if you could just visualize, when you do take the time, hopefully, to go visit that street, visualize the trees not being there, and see what the street's going to look like, because Kemper Road isn't going to be the beautiful street it is if that happens. I mean, it just isn't.
Okay.
So we will try, and if somebody will give me an email address, I would be more than happy to get it to whoever I could, and you could forward it out.
Okay. And it's
I'm gonna write it down.
yeah.
Yeah, all right.
I'm gonna write it down for you,
Thank you.
and I will send it out. Thank you. Not to put you on the spot, Miss Library. I just know you're always here. Thank you. Okay, sir, you have to come up here.
Just at 3958 East Kemper. I just want to just say a couple points. Number one, I've looked at the plans, and the right-of-way, the existing right-of-way is in the existing 10-foot. So they need to get additional right-of-way, and it is at least 3 feet. There's an existing sidewalk there now. So starting from that property where the sidewalk ends, going west, all those down there, there's additional right-of-way outside. And when I say right-of-way, that's warranty deed stuff. Now, the other point I want to make is all the way down to the UDF, and especially that last house, they take a real big hit. The other thing that you need to, when you go to think this thing through, answer yourself make sure you think this thing, even though it's temporary and it goes away and it goes back to the homeowners, that temporary is allowing them to do something to that yard. And that's where the damage occurs. And well, that's the stuff we're saying we can't get back. So just take that into consideration. I know the 10-foot bikeway is probably something you're not thinking about anymore and you're going to come back. But even at the 5-foot, if you should need some existing or temporary right of way, take into account the damage that that's going to cause, even though it's coming back. And then the final thing is, if we are making this part of the comprehensive plan and not just going down to the UDF to get ice cream, I think we need to really think hard about it, well, especially with the bikeway. Even though we're thinking we're going to go down into Sharonville, I think it would be a lot smarter if you built that first and before other damage is done, because I have a fear that you do this and you get damage done to the properties. And for whatever reason, whoever's driving this decides that we're not going to go that route or whatever they said, 20 years from now, we may get into that. Well, in the meantime, we've lost all of our property value. So we got to prove to us, because it's hard. I can see where 42 is going to be a challenge. So it definitely would have been a challenge for a bikeway. Sidewalks might be. So take that into consideration, whatever you guys do. If you're going to go down into Sharonville, you might want to build that part first to show that we have a place to go to before you damage our street. So, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else before I move on? Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Tim Argo, 4044 East Kemper. And I wanted to address some of the comments the mayor made. Mayor, have you ever ridden a bike on the section from 42 down to Mosteller?
Have I personally ever done that?
Yes, sir.
No, I'm not a big bike rider, so.
It is in a
You probably tell, but.
it is in a condition now where it is almost unrideable between missing sections and cracks, expansion cracks. The trail is literally, it's almost unrideable at this point. And, you know, here it is. I'm not sure how old it is. I know it's probably 8-10 years old, maybe. And I don't know where the money's going to come for maintenance for these types of things, but it really needs serious maintenance at this point.
I'll disagree with you. I totally agree with you. It's what I noticed as well. And it's just like other sidewalks throughout the city that we need to maintain and we need to keep up. And so we'll be looking at how do we do that. Our focus the last, probably 5 to 6 years as a council and as an administration, been focusing upon the sidewalks, curbs, and resurfacing of our residential streets. And with this construction season, we will have gotten to all of our main residential streets and resurfacing, doing curb work, doing sidewalk repair work. So it'll give us the opportunity to go back and look at some of these, some of our larger commercial streets and what needs to be done with them, as well as things like that pathway along Kemper Road that exists between Mosteller and 42.
All right. I guess one of the other aspects of this that seems to get pushed aside, I saw where you had a plan for flood mitigation for the downtown Sharonville area. And once again, every time that you lay down more concrete with no plan for any plan, to do something with that water, the fact that we're going to have a whatever, however wide this ends up or however long it ends up, we're going to have more runoff that once again is not going to be, accounted for. And just appears to me that just through the Mill Creek Valley area, it just seems that it takes less and less rain to create the same flood situation that we have down there. And once again, if it's not going to flow to the Mill Creek, it'll flow into Tom Deuce's yard. It'll flow into Adam Hensley's yard. People, my neighbors, it's just going to push more water into places that can't take it anymore, really, is really where it ends up. Thank you.
Okay. we need to really wrap this up. We all worked 8 hours today and we still have a council meeting to do. So this is going to be the last speaker.
Yeah, I'm Wendell
Thank you for
Branson,
more than
3880 East Kemper Road. I'd like to echo a little bit on what Tom had to say about if this project is going to go through. And it seems to me that the first leg of it wants to run up Kemper Road. For whatever reason, I don't understand that, but it would seem to me that the first leg of it should, if it's going to run from La Rosa's up to Kemper Road, that should be where it starts. And there should be some safe way to cross Kemper Road down there. But at this point, there isn't. So, and at some point in time, I guess I'll have to come back to another meeting, because if you're looking to get out of here in time, I don't understand the connectivity. I don't understand all the connectivity.
Well, here's right.
Because bike paths and walk paths aren't that heavily used. So I fail to see the issue with, or the connectivity. How does that help? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, some of the residents that live in Sharonville in the apartment complex, you see them walking, whether it be on 42 or walking down to La Rosa.
I could tell you the same thing the other guy said earlier. You could sit out there, and I do a lot. I might see 2 people a day, maybe 3. Hardly ever do you see a bicycle.
And that's something that we'll have to take into consideration. That's why I said we're going to have a council work session. We're going to talk all of this out. We're probably going to send somebody out there to count people.
Well, the last comment I'd like to make is, I brought this up before. There's a footpath already worn that runs from La Rosa's all the way up across Kemper Road. It goes on up 42 where people walk back and forth. I guess probably some of them work up there, or they walk up to, some of the stores or whatever. And it seems to me that
I know a lot of
when
people,
UDF was put in there and they put that wall in there, they didn't even leave enough room in there to even put a sidewalk, I don't think. Because there's utility poles and everything standing there. So I don't understand if it's supposed to run up that way someday, are they going to come through and tear that wall out?
Space for, I think it's only an 8-foot shared use path there because of the signage issues, but yeah, there's space there for a sidewalk.
On 42?
You're talking at UDF and Kemper? Where are you talking?
42. UDF 42.
This plan includes a path that goes all the way to 42.
Up 42 to where? Where does this end? Does the bike path, walk path go from
the path we're talking
downtown
about tonight
Sharonville to the county line?
The path we're talking about tonight goes from 42 to basically Sharon Woods. The path that we have an award of application of funding for from OKI for 2023, I believe it is, construction, or 2024, goes from La Rosa's all the way up to Kemper and 42.
Goes up to Kemper?
Yes.
It's not approved from there, I guess, north?
Correct. There is currently not a plan to go north of Kemper to 275 in that pathway. The idea would ultimately be a way to connect Kemper to Fields Erdel, which would be our share on the line. But you're talking an expense that we can't meet yet.
Right.
There's a goal that we would see a path of some sort along Cornell Road, because we've heard folks desiring to do that. That's one we haven't found an economically feasible way to do that yet because of the topography that exists there. So, these are all
conversations that we've been having for, I mean, I've been either in council or in this role for 20 years now. So these are all conversations that have been had with residents and businesses for the last 20 years, as far as trying to find needs. Well, in fact, it goes back 50 years when people were talking about putting sidewalks in front yards because of that need. So this isn't like something that has just come up in 2020. It's been around as a community for years.
But does your connectivity, is that so that is your future hope that everybody rides a bicycle and walks?
The future hope would be that residents would have the option and the choice to be able to be connected in whatever way they want to be of the amenities of the city as a whole. And whether that be walking, biking, driving their car, that is what connectivity is about. Is being able to take on a beautiful 75-degree day, walking out your door and being able to safely walk up to Sharon Woods, or being able to safely walk down Kemper Road to go get a footlong at Root Beer Stand, or be able to safely walk out your front door and walk down to UDF and get an ice cream mill. Be able to safely walk out your door with your kids, your dogs, or anybody else and walk into downtown and hopefully a brand new Depot Square area that people can congregate and be part of and be a community. That is the goal. That is what we talk about by way of connectivity. And it's a much bigger and broader discussion that we're going to have in the little bit of time that Ms. Hoppy is getting ready to cut us off. But that is my,
it's almost 10 o'clock.
That is my
We have
understanding
lots
of
of other business.
that is my understanding of connectivity that we have heard for years, and especially have heard as part of the comprehensive plan update that we did, that are desired on the part of the residents and the community of Sharonville. That's what we want to be in order to be a city where people can live, work, and play together for the generations to come.
But this project here seems to me to be more serving the minority than it does the majority. Because it is a basically non-used path that runs through there.
We're getting ready to vote on this project to table it.
Okay.
Okay. And then that's what I explained earlier. We're going to come together in a work session. Then we're going to include you after that work session and in a public meeting. So you guys have a voice. I don't want you to ever feel again that you don't have a voice. You do. We're listening. And however many houses it is up there that we're affecting, we don't want to affect them. Not all of us want to cut down a tree. I understand that. I would be, heartsick if you cut down my tree in my front yard. However, mine's not in the right of way. My tree is in my yard that I own. I appreciate you guys. So that's, when we get to the business part of it, I am going to ask for a voice vote tonight to table this project. Then we're going to have a meeting with the mayor and see what we can't do to repurpose the money and the time that we've spent on this and see what we can't come up with. When we have that plan in place, I'm going to make sure you all get a certified letter or a hand-delivered letter if I have to do it myself to make sure you're invited to another meeting. And we'll start that meeting probably about 6:30 and we'll listen and we'll let everybody speak and be a part of the process. You may not like it when the process is over, but you might, you might like it. Who knows? But we've got to get together first. And we have to stop this project before we move forward.
Okay. That's what I want you to do, is stop this one.
And that's fine. And that's what we're getting ready to do.
Okay. Thank you.
So when I do my voice vote, you can stand back there and you can cheer for me.
Okay.
Okay. And thank you all for coming. I do appreciate all your comments. We don't take that lightly. We really, truly don't. Thank you all for coming. Because sometimes I look out here and it's empty except for Tim Schmidt. And I've named a chair after him. I know, he's not here tonight. So we're going to move forward with our clerk of council, Mrs. Buhite.
Oh.
Any reports?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you. Our law director, Mr. Pete Meyer. No report. Is there anything else anyone in here wants to talk about besides Kemper Road? Because now is the opportunity. Like I told you guys at Law Committee, here's your opportunity. Yay!
I feel like I should apologize. though,
No,
for doing
you don't
so.
need to apologize at all. This
Thank
is
you.
your opportunity to, I just wanted to cut off my portion of the meeting.
Thank you. And I may have missed my opportunity for this because I did prepare something to share regarding my experience as a member of the steering committee for the comprehensive plan. So I'm not sure if I should have done that earlier during the public hearing or if I can do so now.
You can do so now. That's fine. That's perfect.
Thank you.
You guys were very instrumental in letting
Thank
us
you.
use your property.
So I was thrilled to be a member of the Sharonville 2030 Steering Committee and had such a positive experience meeting and working with both city and other community leaders, working with Wendy Muller, as well as the folks at MSP. The steering committee met throughout the year to identify city needs and to develop goals, and also scheduled multiple open house meetings and workshops for the public to include their input as well. As a leader of an organization in our community, it meant a lot to me personally to be involved in the process, as I'm sure it did to the other organizational leaders and small business owners who are also involved. These are people who are working incredibly hard to be successful, which in turn adds great value to our community. Ensuring their involvement in the development of the plan added depth and perspective to the working process and created a new kind of partnership and communication to a degree I had not previously experienced in my 8 years of working in the city of Sharonville. I was impressed by the process of involving key stakeholders in the community as members of the steering committee, as well as involving community members through various open houses and idea gathering sessions where the public had the opportunity to share their ideas, feedback, concerns, and their hopes and dreams for their community and neighborhood. During those meetings, people expressed their gratitude to have the opportunity to not only learn about the city's process for the development of the plan, but also to have the opportunity to engage and be a vital part of that process. Having personally attended the open houses and idea sessions and interacted directly with many of the people in attendance, it was clear that the priorities shared by community members overlapped with the needs outlined by the city and community leaders, as there were common themes that emerged from each event. Those themes ultimately became the comprehensive plan. I respected the process taken to include in the plan the thoughts and feedback from community members. It's a very similar process taken by the public library last year while developing our very own facilities master plan for the next 10 years and beyond. Involving people at every level is an authentic and intentional process that demonstrates integrity and genuine care for the success of the plan and dedication to city residents, including how they respond to the plan. It was a pleasure working with both John Creech and Sarah Dirks and appreciated their leadership throughout the process. They're representing the city very well, and I think the community will be happy with the end result of this comprehensive plan. As a community leader, I'm thrilled with the plan and its potential impact on our local library and its usage and the bigger impact the plan will have community-wide. I look forward to the next phase and want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experience. In terms of the connectivity, I wanted to say that I empathize with the folks who are on Kemper Road, and I'm also happy to hear Mayor Hardman and hope that council will be in alignment with that, just to continue the conversations about the walkability and just being committed to the connectivity. And as someone who struggles to bring in the amount of visitors that we are technically using taxpayer dollars, to be open typically during a non-pandemic time, 7 days a week, and, maintaining a staff that it takes to maintain those open hours, our visitor stats are really low compared to many of our other larger locations. So one thing that we heard at these sessions, from people of all ages at every session, person after person, was improving the walkability and the connectivity. Again, people of all ages, they want to walk from, up on the hill, and they don't have a sidewalk to come down Thornview so that they can walk to the rec center or to the library or to Gower Park. They wanted to be able to walk from downtown to various other places throughout the city. So it's one of the things that I was most excited about, and it was very evident that, other people, the vast majority of the people who are coming also wanted that. So I don't know what the answer is, and I don't live in the city of Sharonville. I simply work here, but hopefully we can find something that works for everybody involved, because it does have a huge impact. People want to use their strollers and walk their kids, and whether it's walking or biking, and like you said, safely just being able to get around the city from point A to point B to point C. It would have a huge impact, I think, on us. And while it may not get a lot of use now in some areas, I do think that at least adding a sidewalk would improve, and you would probably see some increase in usage there. And I think that probably wraps up what I wanted to share.
Well,
I didn't introduce myself and say who I was, but sorry. My name is Tina Reilly, and I'm the Senior Branch Manager of our Sharonville Branch Library, and the address is 10980 Thornview Drive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Is the gentleman on Zoom, did you want to speak? Okay, obviously not. All right, so we're going to move forward with our council committees. Community Development, Mr. Tankersley.
No report.
Community Services, Mr. Lippert.
We met August 5th, and did I give you Blomer's written report?
Yeah, I got both.
Okay, so we were joined by approximately 15 to 20 pickleball players, and they are asking Sharonville to consider converting 2 of the tennis courts into pickleball compatible tennis courts. We basically asked Mr. Blomer to get some feedback from the tennis community and consider some other options. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this? Seeing none, we're going to move forward. Budget and Finance, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. No report.
Thank you. Honored Citizens, Mrs. Knight.
Yes, I'd like to this meeting, honor the Public Works Department because the flowers they planted this year in our planters are simply beautiful. And I have gotten several calls and people come up to me and said they're just wonderful.
They are.
So if you could convey that to Joe Kemp, I'd appreciate that. That we just really, like I said, a lot of the residents really enjoy them this year.
Great, thank you. Law Committee and Public Safety, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. The next Law and Public Safety Committee will be on the 18th, 4 p.m. Council Chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept late delivery of ordinance 2020-26E? So moved by Mr. Schmidt, second by Mr. Lippert. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And we are accepting late delivery of 2020-26E. I need a suspension rules motion for first and only reading of ordinance 2020-25E and 2020-26E. So moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr.
I don't think 2020 is.
It's not, I crossed that off. Yeah, it was on the agenda accidentally. Yep, that's why I said 2060.
Got it.
Mr. Wilson put a motion in. Is there a second? So moved by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And that does carry. Unfinished business, please.
Second reading of ordinance 2020-20, an ordinance adopting amended Article 1, 3, and 5 rules and regulations for the Hamilton County Stormwater District within the city of Sharonville.
And new business, and I will go ahead and do the voice vote first.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to do a voice vote this evening to stop the process on the Kemper Road bike path, walk path, whatever, and reconvene and work out something else? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Cook. Is there any discussion on this? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
All those opposed, no. And we'll move forward with new business.
Okay.
And thank you all very much for your patience through our public hearing, and thank you for coming with your comments.
First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2020-25E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to notify the county auditor of a special assessment on certain properties in the city of Sharonville
to reimburse the city for costs of removal of weeds in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 731.54 and Sharonville Codified Ordinance Section 521.05. Notice to cut weeds, construct, repair, or clean sidewalks, and abate nuisances. And Section 521.13, weed removal for calendar year 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2020-25E? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call. Mr. Duda, please make sure you're unmuted.
All right, Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Duda?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight? Yes. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2025E has been approved. This is a first and only reading of emergency ordinance 2020-26E, directing the filing of a verified petition to appropriate a fee simple interest consisting of 0.226 acres, approximately 9,850 square feet, more or less, from PJC Inc. as a quick take for the public purpose of improving a public roadway, open to the public without charge in the city of Sharonville, Hamilton County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2020-26E? So moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Schmidt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Duda?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight? Yes. And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2020-26E has been approved. And this is just a first reading of resolution 2020-R16, resolution supporting and approving the city of Sharonville 2030 comprehensive plan.
And this is one last opportunity for residents that wish to be heard this evening. And are there any other matters to be brought before council? Not? Is there a motion for adjournment? So moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Tankersley. All those in favor, yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no, and we do stand adjourned.
Good night, everyone.